While an investigation into the whereabouts of Michael and Alex went on publicly last October, behind the scenes a more serious investigation went on into their mother's involvement.
Burgundy Mazda protege. Get him going, Pam. They got 2 kids. Okay.
Suspicions were raised just hours after this 911 phone call reporting the alleged carjacking. A sketch artist said he doubted Susan's story because of the way she provided details for this drawing of the suspect. 2 days after the boys were missing, FBI agent David Espy told the court, "I had no doubt Susan was not telling the truth." Espy said he came to that conclusion because of Susan's nonverbal behavior. During questioning, Susan, when sitting down, crossed her legs and arms and was slouched in the chair. But Espy said she would frequently get up and begin pacing the room. Several times she stood in the corner, and occasionally she made crying sounds, but no tears came out. 7 days after Espy's observation, Susan appeared on Good Morning America in her last public interview. 5 hours after this appearance, Susan was picked up by police for more questioning. SLED agent James Harris said she asked him if she looked good on the national news. He said Susan said she'd like to get away from the media and go to the beach. Later that same day, Susan gave both a written and oral confession to the murders of her sons.
Until yesterday afternoon, authorities had held out hope that little Michael and Alex Smith would be found alive. Then, the awful discovery. Their mother, Susan Smith, had apparently concocted an elaborate hoax to cover up their deaths. A grim-faced Sheriff Howard Wells, who had led an around-the-clock search, made the announcement.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children.
In the arrest warrant, Smith confessed. Her car with the bodies of little Alex and Michael was found in a nearby lake. Earlier, she issued what would be her final appeal on national TV.
I think it takes a very sick and emotionally unstable person to be able to take 2 beautiful children like that, to be able to keep them from their parents.
Anguish and anger swept the close-knit community of Union, South Carolina. Susan Smith, after all, had grown up here. When she reported her children kidnapped, many felt as if their own children were missing.
Stuff like that don't happen here. It's just...
Did you believe her?
Yeah. Everybody believed her.
I did.
Well,
my body got something wasn't right from the beginning.
Law enforcement officials had their doubts too.
I think early on, law enforcement just felt that there were some inconsistencies.
In California, a stunned relative learned her great-grandsons were dead.
Just couldn't imagine that Susan would do that. She always seemed to be such a devoted mother.
We are outside the courthouse where Susan Smith is being arraigned this morning. Authorities say right now she is the only suspect. Monica?
Randall Pinkston in Union, South Carolina this morning. Thank you.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy, these whole families love you so much, and you guys have got to be strong because you are. I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay.
It was a plea that touched the heart of a nation. A young mother pleading for the safe return of her 2 young children, kidnapped, she said, by a carjacker. One day after Susan Smith made that emotional plea for her children's safety, she confessed to killing them. Police pulled her car out of Lake John D. Long, her 2 young sons still strapped in their car seats. Police had already released part of Smith's handwritten confession. Today, they released it all. In it, Smith says she was despondent because she was in love with a man who didn't love her. I was very emotionally distraught, she wrote. I felt I couldn't be a good mom anymore, but I didn't want my children to grow up without a mom. I felt I had to end our lives to protect us from any grief or harm. I wanted to end my life so bad, and was in that car ready to go down that ramp into the water. And I did go part way, but I stopped. I went again and stopped. I then got out of the car and stood by the car a nervous wreck. I dropped to the lowest point when I allowed my children to go down that ramp into the water without me. I took off running and screaming, oh God, no, what have I done? Why did you let this happen? I wanted to turn around so bad and go back, but I knew it was too late. Smith also apologizes to her 2 young sons, saying she's praying for their forgiveness.
As Susan Smith came to court this morning, an angry crowd was there to greet her. Many were from Union's African-American community, angry not only at the death of 2 innocent children, but also at the racial aspect of the case.
Her lying about it, saying that a black man done it, she didn't have no business doing that.
To some in the African-American community here, the case of Michael and Alex resembles other high-profile murders in which an African-American man has been falsely accused. William Free says it reminds him of the Charles Stewart case in Boston, where Stewart murdered his pregnant wife, but told police an African-American man had done it.
Matter of fact, I got some calls from people in Boston this morning, and they expressed the sentiment also of what we're feeling around here, how everyone is just ready to believe and pin a crime on black people, and that's not necessarily the case all the time.
For many African-American men in Union, the last 10 days have been uncomfortable.
Oh man, I had to walk very soft. You know, it's just like walking on cotton, you know. That was time that I wanted to go fishing, you know. But hey, I couldn't get caught, you know, going fishing. That was time that I wanted to go hunting. I couldn't go hunting. What if a black man would have got caught in the woods hunting with a gun?
Less attention has been paid to the race issue among the white community.
Yeah, I can understand them being upset about it, but again, like I said, that should be put aside. That anger should be put aside and focused on what she has done to the children and what it's done to this town.
And some in the black community agree.
This is bad enough, but wanting to pull up something else to make a racism thing out of it, that's just going to make the matter of the situation worse.
We steal and we rob, but we don't do it all.
There was commotion tonight outside the Union County Courthouse. Black people furious that one of their own was targeted as a suspect for a fictitious, vicious crime. Vincent Thompson bears a frightening resemblance to the fake suspect.
Well, they tend to stare at you funny.
I guess tonight shows that all blacks are not bad. You know, there are some people that are bad, but all blacks are not bad.
Officers patrol the streets outside the sheriff's department to keep the peace, but the signs tell the story. Susan Smith's name has been removed. Now it's just prayers for Michael and Alex. People still wear the children's pictures on their chests, and yellow ribbons are still tied to cars. Folks say they can't bear to take them off, because then the horrible truth is all too real.
It's awful. I just can't imagine any lady doing that.
It's awful. I hope she gets what she deserves.
Women especially are stunned that a mother could murder her children, then go on TV begging for their safety.
It's very upsetting to a lot of people here in Union, and it's just very shocking to hear it.
I think she should pay dearly for anybody to hurt their children like she did. I just can't.
But what's being said in the African-American community is this.
Blaming on the black man, it's a shame. I mean, to fabricate a whole picture and everything. The picture's nationwide.
Carl Long says he was questioned by police last week.
They made me feel kind of bad coming, picking me up off my job early in the morning.
There is lots of tension.
Racial tension?
Yes.
I'm not really angry. I'm hurt.
Everything come up that's wrong, everything come up that's bad, first thing to do is depict the black man as the epitome of evil.
I heard about it, her confession on TV. You know, Sheriff Howard Wells didn't even let me know first. Not even a phone call or anything. I started hearing all these reports on TV that she had been arrested, she had confessed. So I was beside myself trying to figure out what they were talking about. But I found out, you know, that what had happened to him like the rest of the world found him.
In a procession of police cars, Susan Smith arrived at the courthouse under heavy security and hiding from everyone who came to see her. The angry crowd of onlookers jeered. Smith was led into the courthouse without showing her face.
People had tried, citizens tried so hard to find those boys for 10 days and been led on by Susan. I mean, it was a layer of betrayal, and now to know, hope beyond hope, we weren't going to recover them alive.
Ultimately, when she was confronted with the lies that were coming
that she was issuing one at a time, it sort of became impossible. It was untenable for her to continue her story after they were, calling her out on one after the other, and ultimately she realized that, it had to come to an end.
The events that followed the actual initial report of the carjacking to, where we ended up finding the kids, I was there that night, and I just, basically what I remember is the car being put on a rollback and being removed from John D. Long Way.
A tow truck rolled in. Divers had recovered the missing Mazda protege and the bodies of the 2 young children.
What was that night like?
It was surreal. I mean, it was very, Union's such a small, quiet, peaceful little community. It's having something of this magnitude happen there sort of amplified the impact of it, because it just wasn't a place you'd have that kind of thing happen. And so it was definitely an odd, like I said, surreal experience. I mean, everybody was quiet, standing out on the banks of the lake. You could see the divers out in the water. They had Greer's wrecker had pulled up and backed up in there, and they were running the cable out into the water to hook it to the car to get it pulled out. And the divers were in the water, to negotiate and help try to move it as it came up a little bit so they could move it in the water. And it was very unusual.
How somebody could take 2 small kids like that, I mean, they probably weren't even old enough or had strength enough to open the door or whatever. But to strap them in restraints and leave them in a car or let the car run off in the water, it's cold-blooded.
When the car came out of the water, seeing the children in the back of the car was horrifying. It was really, it was very, very moving. Just tragic.
And Michael and Alex have just gone home to be with the Lord.
So if they're home, then where did that leave us? That leaves us right here in a little town with all the world watching us today. And the question is, how do we cope?
The look on the face of the anguished young father, David Smith, touched everyone. He could hardly walk. He wept as the procession of cars left for the cemetery, and people wondered again, how could this happen?
I don't understand. Only God knows.
I didn't understand it. I couldn't comprehend it. There was no way that she had done that. That's what I was feeling. I was hearing it, but I couldn't get my brain to process that thought. And the thought of that they were gone forever, that was even harder to process, that I was never going to see them again.
Also speaking publicly today was Scotty Vaughn, the brother of Susan Smith.
On behalf of my family, we want to apologize to the black community of Union.
He's sorry because his sister falsely named a black man as the person who carjacked her and kidnapped her sons. But police sources now say this drawing of the fake suspect made them suspicious of Smith from the very beginning. When experts removed the stocking cap, they saw the profile of David Smith, Susan Smith's estranged husband, who's now grieving over the loss of his sons.
As CNN hangs its finishing touches on USC's auditorium, Union County residents began to trickle in.
How many were in your party?
2. After a brief explanation of how things work,
this is a fax, we've got phone.
Carolyn, talk to Marianne in Oklahoma.
Host Susan Rook takes over and the talkback begins. First, the audience tries to convey a clearer picture of what Union is really like.
We have our separate divisions and whatnot, football teams, that sort of thing. But as the case of Michael and Alex proved, when there's a crisis, when there's a tragedy, we pull together.
Rook says she wanted to help clear the air. That's one reason CNN picked Union for its first show on the road.
And one of the things that personally and journalistically I was most upset about is the issue of Union being remembered only for Susan Smith. You know, when you think of Union in South Carolina or Union County, oh, that's the place where that woman killed her kids. You don't think of Milwaukee as the Jeffrey Dahmer case.
But before the show ended, the audience had to take care of some unfinished business. When Susan Smith first reported her children missing, she claimed a black man took them along with her car.
I find it ironic that the 150 churches in Union are praying for the mercy for Susan Smith, when in fact, if it had have been a black man that killed those children, those same churches would be calling for an eye for an eye.
For us, the race, yes, if it had have been a black man, he probably would have been hung.
I wake up beside you in Mom's car. I try to get you out. You're strapped to the back seat. I am too.
Katherine Massey Book Club. Contrary to popular opinion, at least one Negro on the plantation does think of Milwaukee as Dahmer land. Now, they were saying that in 1995, so 30 years later, yes, there is one coon on the plantation that says Milwaukee Dahmer land. That's the first thing I think of. Then Sade C. Robinson. Katherine Massey Book Club, context of white supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy, racism, information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Friday, September 19, 2025. So I have been told this is our third session on Maria Eftimiades, The Sins of the Mother, the heartbreaking true story behind the Susan Smith murder case. We're picking up midpoint of chapter 9. They were kind of reinforcing my point, talking about all of the different attacks on children and how lax the prosecution is, kind of midpoint of chapter 9. The song playing at the beginning, Katherine Massey Book Club, really flexing our brilliance. So we are 3 for 3 playing songs that are directly about the Susan Smith case. Now, the song that we are listening to in the background today, Hayden, that's the name of the group, and then it's titled When This Is Over. The lyrics for the song, just, I know some folks say they have a hard time getting the lyrics. Might be the first time you've heard it, so some of the lyrics. I wake up beside you in Mom's car. I try to get you out. You're strapped to the back seat. I am too. The car is rolling into water. Why are we strapped to our seats? Trapped. What did we do? Now, amongst all of these songs, because they got love ballads to Susan Smith and everything you can imagine, that is everything except the ballad for the black man and the toboggan. I did not find those songs. My bad, Leroy. Sorry to the Negroes of Union, South Carolina. Black male privilege, jingle, nothing. I didn't hear, nothing of that nature. They got songs to the Dead White Boys, songs to Susan Smith, songs about, South Carolina in general, but my fault, black dude with a toboggan. No. Anyway, we heard a kind of massive collage of different news reports and documentaries about the Susan Smith case, and I mean lots. Just quickly, again, all of this is happening in the midst of O.J. Simpson. One of the first reports where they were talking to a white woman and she said, everybody believes Susan Smith. Oh my God, one of the best moments of black self-respect in this whole case. There are two black females who immediately, they weren't even on camera, but they were to her right. And you could hear them verbalize, and then the camera panned left and they came on screen and they said, something wasn't right from the beginning. And the white woman, she couldn't even say anything. Hey, do not, that's why I say all the time, when people say everybody knows or we all know, hey, we do not, there are very, very few things that we all know. And she was just factually incorrect. I played the audio last week. They were doing interviews before Susan Smith was arrested where white reporters were asking, have you been truthful with all the information? Because some people are suspicious. They even asked her husband, David, do you believe her? You think this wench is telling us everything? This is before she was even arrested. So clearly, not everyone believed Susan Smith from the beginning, white and non-white. But shout out for black self-respect. Man, you got to hear some of the privileged black males in the report. Now, last week, we heard Gilliam Edwards. He was also one of the black males. He said he had just had neck surgery. He said, I'm going to do my talking in the street. Something ain't right. She took those children. You got to hear him directly. That was him. He said, I wasn't angry. I was hurt. And that they always depict the black man as the epitome of evil. That was Gilliam Edwards. He had his neck brace on and everything. You also got to hear, I told you, the black man who said it was like walking on cotton. Said, woo, go fishing. Whoa, Leroy ain't going fishing. I tell you, got to hear that one. You got to hear Carl Long. He said, they came on my job. What you know about taking these white children? Come on down to the stage. He said it was right embarrassing. They snatched him out in front of, man, come on. And one of the most important segments that was played, they spoke with a young lady, black female, victim of white supremacy. And this is not a criticism or anything. I'm just pointing out what she said. She says, now this is after Susan Smith had been arrested and confessed and everything. And she said, I guess this shows not all black people are bad. Or she said, the way she said it was, tonight shows that not all blacks are bad. I was staggered. One, if a black person, if Leroy in a toboggan had done this, that's what it would have shown, that all black people are bad. Like, Jesus Christ. Nobody says that about Jeff Epstein. He can go out here and rape all the children in the world. Nobody says that about Mary Kay Letourneau. She can go out and rape all the children in the world. Nobody says that about Jay Dahmer. He can go rape and kill all the children in the world. And that does not become a reflection on white people in total. A fabricated Negro male, all of black people had. You heard Mr. Edwards, Gilliam Edwards, he said, black dude, the epitome of evil. And it's not even true. And then once they find out what really happened, Susan Smith doesn't become the epitome of evil. All white women got to run and hide, and oh my Lord, you're racist. And infanticide, you're gonna kill your children. That's not all white women. That's not even all white women in Union, South Carolina. Nope, it's just Susan Smith. But I thought that we needed some sort of proof. We needed evidence to show, hey, not all blacks are bad. Now, Jesus Christ, I get in trouble for saying, hey, it's some nonsense. We should stop saying not all white people are racist. We needed Susan Smith to show us that not all blacks are bad. Woo, man. Let's see. They brought up Charles Stewart. You heard black people on the news giving interviews saying, I got calls from Boston saying, oh my Lord, we know all about this. They commenced to kicking in doors. What you know about that pregnant white woman? What you know about them white children? We know all about this. We've seen all this before. Turn out to be a lie. Do you even get an apology? My bad again. That same thing. Did they do any songs? Black folks in Boston, my bad. On behalf of Charles Stewart, my bad. We're going to do a scholarship on behalf of Charles Stewart. We'll get you some hockey tickets. You can go see the Bruins. My bad. We can't do the Celtics because that's expensive, but we can get you to the Bruins game, see. Come on. They could have done that at South Carolina. We get you some tickets to the Clemson game. Did they do that? Did they go out to the projects and get all the colored folks in Union to make up for Susan Smith? We're going to get you some free tickets. Come out, you tailgate on us. We'll get all the Mad Dog 2020. You can drink. You act a fool at the tailgate. And then you come on in the stadium and we're going to cheer for them Tigers. They do that? Anybody hear about that? Anyway, and they just keep in mind at the end now, if this had been a black dude, what do we think the attitude would have been if Leroy had really done this? And then what happens when they find out that a white woman did this? Mercy? What? Would y'all have been talking mercy if this had been Leroy in a toboggan? Same time. Did white people... Come on. It's been 30 years. Do white people seem merciful about O.J. Simpson 30 years on? He was exonerated. Susan Smith confessed. Gus T., the Black O.J. Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy audio segment 1.
Mark and Jeannie arrived in Union about 9:30 Friday morning. Satellite trucks were lined up in front of City Hall, but only a few reporters lingered on the steps that early in the day. Mark went inside to change out of his sweatsuit, while Jeannie waited outside. She stood by the steps, holding her art case, and feeling uncomfortable. She worried that the cameraman would begin to question who she was. She knew that almost anything could be a story on a slow news day. Already word was out that a well-known artist was on her way to Union, and Jeannie didn't want anything to disrupt her chances of meeting with Susan Smith. When Mark returned, they asked directions to the Russell house, where Susan was staying. When they arrived, they walked past surprised news crews and proceeded up the driveway. They didn't get far. Margaret Gregory bounded out of the house and sternly told them to leave. "Susan's not going to see you," she said, her voice flat. "She has no interest in seeing you." Mark and Jeannie almost laughed. They tried to walk by Margaret. She stepped in front of them again. "She's not going to see you," Margaret said, her eyes cold. Jeannie couldn't understand it. In the more than 7,000 cases she'd worked, she felt she had a sense of what was typical behavior and what wasn't. More than family, clergy, or counselors, a person in a situation like Susan Smith's would want to see a person who knows what she's going through. That person was Mark Klass. "Does she know who we are and why we're here?" Mark asked. "She's not seeing anyone right now," responded Margaret. Jeannie pulled out some newspaper articles about her work sketching suspects and a copy of her resume. She included a copy of the People magazine cover story on Polly Klass. In it, the story mentioned the accuracy of her sketch of Polly's killer. "Please pass this to Susan," she said. "Mark is here to be a comfort to her, and I'm here to put a face on this man and help get those children back." Margaret Gregory took the papers wordlessly. Jeannie tried again. "This really is a very, very gentle process," she said. "For most victims, it's actually very cathartic to get that image out. It's like speaking a foreign language and getting someone who can understand you. To get this image down, a physical, tangible placement of that image. Again, Margaret Gregory said nothing. It's like talking to someone with no ears, Jeannie thought. She says, Susan's not seeing anyone, no matter what you say, even if it's not an appropriate response. As they left, Mark and Jeannie shared their disbelief at their rejection at the Russell house. Jeannie tried to give Margaret Gregory the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she really doesn't know, said Jeannie. We're presuming she's heard of Polly's case. Still, it was very strange. She's so unemotional, so one-dimensional, she said. Like a little bulldog, added Mark. She doesn't understand. She does not get it. They talked about Susan. They wondered if Margaret Gregory would really relay their messages. Jeannie wondered if Susan was too frightened to try to conjure up the image of the carjacker again. Mark thought about calling David Smith's grandfather, James Martin, in California. He'd spoken with him several days earlier, and Martin had seemed enthusiastic that Mark had planned to make the trip to Union. While Mark stayed behind at the Russell house with the press, Jeannie headed back to downtown and made her way to Sheriff Wells's office. There she met Carol Allison, an FBI agent. Jeannie was pleased to see that the Bureau had a female agent on the case. When Jeannie introduced herself, Allison said they had been expecting her. She showed Jeannie the faxes that had come into the sheriff's office from various citizens, stories about Jeannie Boylan and the work she did with victims. Allison explained that they wanted to include Jeannie Boylan in a high-level meeting with the FBI agents, SLED, and Sheriff Wells, but first it needed to be cleared through the Bureau's San Francisco office. As Jeannie waited, she told Allison about her work. As she spoke, Jeannie occasionally peered out from the small office where she sat with Allison and watched the chaos in the office of the sheriff. SLED agents in camouflage walked in and out. Half-eaten sandwiches lay strewn on desks. 4 secretaries answered constantly ringing phones. To almost every caller, they said the same words. "Thank you very much, but there's nothing we have for you to do." Jeannie was amazed. This is crazy, she thought. In Polly's case, volunteers were so important. She figured SLED had its own methods for searching, but certainly there were things for volunteers to do, passing out flyers, sending mailings. FBI agent Allison interrupted her musings. She had just received the call authorizing them to include Jeannie Boylan in their strategy meeting. She motioned for Jeannie to follow her next door. Sheriff Wells was on the telephone. He looked up and nodded hello to Jeannie Boylan. Moments later, 9 FBI and SLED agents joined them. Allison closed the door to the sheriff's office. "Now," said Allison, "tell them what you told me." Boylan told them about memory and how a traumatized individual stores the image of a face. She told them how susceptible that image is to change. Now and then, she glanced at Carol Allison, thinking, "Is this what you want?" Apparently, it was. The law enforcement officials listened in rapt attention. Jeannie explained her criticism of the original drawing of the suspect. "It's situationally inappropriate for a person entering a vehicle," she told them. "The positioning is wrong. He's void of emotion. There are a number of red flags in it. It's the drawing of someone very passive." She talked about the Polly class case, how early on, detectives were frustrated by interviews with Polly's 2 friends, the only witnesses to her kidnapping. The 2 girls had seen the man for several minutes. He'd bound and gagged them before grabbing Polly, but their descriptions of the kidnapper varied dramatically. The differences were normal, Jeannie insisted. If they had been the same, that would have been odd. She told them a little about how a traumatized mind digests an image, and about compulsive repetition, when the mind goes over and over the same event. "Nothing impacts recall more than emotion," she said. "That's what happens under trauma. Your mind is trying to move that memory and gain mastery over it. The mind is so powerful. It tries to protect you. It tries to feed new information into that memory that is more emotionally palatable. At one point, Jeannie wondered if the FBI and SLED agents really understood her focus on memory, emotion, and perception. Those were very abstract terms, she knew, for men used to dealing with the details of police work. She gave them an example about a murder weapon, a gun, or a knife. If, at first, it has on it a single set of fingerprints, and then it is passed down through a dozen people, each holding it, touching it, by the time it is inspected, the weapon is covered with fingerprints, she said. It is no longer the same weapon it was at the beginning. She explained that the traditional FBI method of analyzing an image from a victim's memory is much the same. The method, created in the 1940s, requires the victim to look through mugshots, a total of 960 full facial photographs. The agents place little pieces of paper over various parts of the face, the mouth, nose, eyes. The actual image, Jeannie Boylan told them, begins to distort with exposure to as few as 12 photographs. It's an archaic method, and once that information is gone, it's gone. SLED Chief Robert Stewart listened carefully. "Well, I don't think our person uses that technique," he said, reaching for the phone. He called a subordinate and spoke for a few minutes. "They use the FBI facial identification catalog," he said. Jeannie rolled her eyes, exasperated. That was just what she'd been talking about. 10. In the hour and a half Jeannie met with SLED investigators, FBI agents, and Sheriff Wells, she learned that the team investigating the Smith boys' disappearance did not believe Susan Smith at all. At one point, a senior investigator asked a crucial question. "Do you have the ability to know if she is fabricating?" Jeannie answered without missing a beat. "I do," she said. "If you know what you're doing, you can really detect when someone is fabricating." She would know very early on, she said, if Susan was providing actual information or merely making up details as she went along. "If you fabricate information, it's very blatant," she said. The men seemed excited by her words. One said, "It's kind of a human lie detector test," and Jeannie nodded. They understood. Later that day, Jeannie returned to the Russell home. She thought about what the law enforcement officials had said about Susan. Jeannie decided that she would make up her own mind about whether Susan was telling the truth. After all, Jeannie had been on many cases in the past where law enforcement were suspicious of the parents. She knew it was a part of their job to be a little distrustful of everyone. Arriving at the house, Jeannie decided to distance herself from the reporters assembled along the road. She wondered if Susan could see her from the window, if Susan thought she was a reporter or an FBI agent. By now, Jeannie had rented a car so she could come and go easily, and not depend on Mark Class and the team from American Journal. She had also decided to change her look, trading the stodgy black business suit for jeans and a shirt, and tucking her blonde hair into a baseball cap. But no matter what Jeannie did, Margaret Gregory always met her in the driveway with the words, "Susan's not interested." Throughout the day, Jeannie checked in occasionally with the FBI. They told her that they couldn't force Susan to meet with her. If they did, Susan would likely be hostile, which wouldn't help at all. Jeannie needed to be a neutral entity, someone Susan felt was on her side. On the way back to the hotel, Jeannie and Mark shared their frustrations. They joked that they wished they could somehow tranquilize Margaret Gregory and slip by her. They were especially annoyed when they discovered that Margaret worked in public relations and was married to a cousin of David's, a shirt-tail relative, they called her. "It's so strange," Mark said. "It seems to me They are putting Susan ahead of the children's welfare. There's no time to waste. You have to find the children as fast as possible. They're making all the wrong moves." Jeannie agreed. They headed to their rooms to get ready for dinner. Around 10:30 p.m., Jeannie used the hotel phone to check her messages at home in Bend. She listened in astonishment to a message left by a young woman about 20 minutes earlier.
"Jeannie, this is Tracy Wright,"
the young woman said with a thick Southern accent.
"I'm taking media calls for Susan Smith.
Susan is ready to work with you to develop a caricature of the abductor." Tracy left a number for Jeannie to call. Jeannie grabbed a pen and jotted down the number. She hung up and ran down the hall. She pounded on Mark's door, ecstatic. "Mark, she's going to meet with me," she said, even before he opened the door. She quickly explained about the message, and the two friends devised a strategy. "I'll go in," Jeannie told him, "and once she meets me and understands I'm not a heavy-handed investigator, I'm a nice person to talk to, I'll try to get you in. If you're there, without cameras, by yourself, once I get in and have time with her, I think it will be okay." They debated whether Jeannie should call the number Tracy had left right away, or wait until morning. "It might be too late to call now," Jeannie said, eyeing the clock. Mark agreed. They didn't want to do anything to upset the family. They were so close. At dinner in the restaurant next door, Mark and Jeannie felt relieved. That night, Jeannie could hardly sleep. At 8:30 the next morning she called. A man answered, groggy from sleep. Tracy, he grumbled, had gone to work. "I was just sleeping here in the bed," he said harshly. When Jeannie explained who she was, the man gave her another number to call. When she did, Margaret Gregory answered the phone. It was her home number. Jeannie sighed. This did not look good. She tried. She told Margaret that a Tracy Wright had said Susan was ready to meet with her. Margaret's response didn't surprise her. "Susan is not interested in doing this," Margaret said flatly. Jeannie tried not to show her growing annoyance. "Well, Margaret, I understand," she said, "but I got a call last night. I understand she is willing to see me." There was silence on the phone. "No," Margaret said, "Susan is not interested in doing this." On the way to Union that morning, Jeannie and Mark talked it over again. "It sounds like Susan is wanting to work with you," Mark said. "Margaret hadn't even talked to her today, and she still said no." "Well," said Jeannie, "if Susan is willing and Margaret is not letting me in, then Margaret's my enemy. I'm not leaving here until I make sure I know what Susan wants." When she got to Union, she drove directly to the Russells. She turned onto Mount Vernon Road and made the right turn on Heathwood Road. Then she pulled right into the Russell driveway, driving almost to the end. A group of relatives and friends of the Smiths and Russells looked out from the screened-in porch in astonishment. Just as Jeannie stepped out of the car, Margaret came running out of the house. "We," she said icily, "are not interested in doing this." Jeannie had had enough. "Okay," she said, "that's fine. But I want you to understand, there is going to be some public repercussion if she doesn't do this. The public is going to want to know why. There is going to be serious questions about this. I'm here to help put a face on the man who has these children. Do you understand?" "Yes," Margaret said. "I understand." At the same time, Mark, too, was trying his best to break down walls. On his first day in Union, he had met briefly with Susan's stepfather, Beverly Russell, and Margaret Frierson from the Adam Walsh Center. Both thought it would be good for him to see Susan, but neither seemed to be able to arrange the encounter. At one point, Mark and Jeannie considered the possibility that Susan and David Smith would not see them because of their relationship to American Journal. Perhaps, they wondered, they see us as reporters. Mark called producers at the show and told them if he got in to see the family, he wanted to do it privately, to give them the benefit of his expertise on searching for the children. The producers agreed. Eventually, Mark left the Russell home and camped out in front of the Tony Road house, where David's father, Charles David Smith, his stepmother, Susan, and Uncle Doug were staying. He got to know Dot Frost and her husband, Earl. On Saturday night, October 29th, he spent a few hours sitting on their porch, talking about the case. Just after 11 p.m., David Smith's Honda pulled into the driveway at the Tony Road house. Mark jumped up and ran across the street. David pulled out quickly and sped back down the street. "That's it," Mark told Dot. "They don't want help. I'm going home." He tried one more time. On Sunday, Mark managed to have a long talk with David's dad. Mark told him that he understood if Susan and David did not want to answer personal questions. All he wanted was to try and help them by offering what he'd learned about abducted kids. He'd been through it. He knew. David's father was supportive. He was living in California during the 9 weeks Polly class was missing. He had seen Mark on television almost every night, pleading for help, criticizing the police investigation, demanding justice for his child. "Get me in to see them," Mark said. "I think it would be a good idea," David's father said slowly, his face drawn with pain. He told Mark that he was so worried about the children, that nobody in the Russell home wanted to do anything or really fight for the kids. He agreed that the family should take advantage of the intense media coverage. "I'll try very hard," he told Mark. Then, David's father told him about his son Danny and how it devastated the family when he died. Mark nodded. He understood the man's pain. Not an hour passed when he didn't think of his Polly. The two men set a tentative appointment for 10 a.m. the following day. Mark would meet with Susan and David, but no cameras would be permitted. By now, Jeannie had all but given up. On Sunday night, a reporter from NBC's Dateline television show interviewed Sheriff Wells about the possibility of a second drawing of the suspect. Wells told her there wasn't going to be one. He didn't want to confuse the public with another image. When the reporter relayed this to Jeannie, she was stunned. She called Carol Allison and asked if the sheriff had said that. Allison came back sheepishly. "He had," she told Jeannie. "They asked him, and he didn't know what else to say." Jeannie sighed. She realized it had just been a careless remark made by the sheriff in the glare of the TV cameras, but she believed it had ended any chance she had for meeting with Susan. The only reason Susan might feel compelled to see her, she reasoned, is if she continued to feel intense pressure from the media. If Wells was saying that it was okay not to do a second drawing, Susan would certainly not bother with her. Jeannie didn't blame Wells. He was under enough pressure already. But at this point, it seemed useless to stay in Union. "I'm powerless now," Jeannie told Mark that night. "The sheriff accidentally took the wind out of my sails." Mark said goodbye to Jeannie that night. She was catching a flight to New York. She had other work she'd been putting off for the past 4 days. Before she left, they talked about their belief that Susan knew where her children were. "At least if she is involved," Mark told Jeannie, "the kids are okay. She's probably got a relative that's got them stashed somewhere." The next day, Mark showed up at the Russell house a few minutes early. He stopped and bought a bag of Danish pastries. Margaret Gregory met him in the driveway. "They're not up to it right now," she said. "Maybe in a few hours." Mark just looked at her. Then Charles David Smith stepped out on the porch, upset. "I thought it was all arranged," he told Mark, his eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry. The older man sat on the stoop of the Russell house and began to cry. Mark didn't know what to say. He felt powerless. He couldn't help the family if he couldn't get in to see Susan and David. David's father told Mark how hard it was getting through each day. The uncertainty, the worry, was tearing him apart. He would never forget the last time he saw his grandchildren, the previous February, when he'd come to Union for a visit. Alex was just 6 months old then, smiling and happy. Michael was running all over, getting into everything. He called him Gran. Charles David Smith could still hear that little voice calling for Gran. Mark Klass left Union that night. He believed then that Susan Smith was clearly involved in the disappearance of her children. Nothing else made any sense. He had been in South Carolina for 4 days and had seen the couple just once when they sped by him Saturday night in front of their Tony Road home trying to get away. There were no press conferences, no statements released to the media. But Mark never believed Susan had harmed her children. It's a custody battle, he thought, as he caught his plane home. Everyone said she was a loving mother who doted on her children. They didn't seem to allow their personal differences to affect their parenting. It didn't seem they were using the children as weapons. She has those kids somewhere, and they're safe. 11. On Monday night, 6 days after the disappearance of Michael and Alex Smith, Reverend Bob Cato called Mitchell Sinclair, the young man who Susan Smith had told police she was on her way to visit the night of the carjacking. Mitchell was a member of Cato's church, Fairview Baptist. In recent years, Cato had performed the funeral services for both of Mitchell's grandparents. A few days earlier, Reverend Cato's son had told him surprising news. "You know, Susan said she was going to Mitchell's house the night she was carjacked," he said. "No," his father said slowly. "I did not know that." The minister became concerned about Mitchell. He knew also that Mitchell was engaged to Donna Garner, Susan Smith's best friend. Perhaps the young couple needed help. When he reached Mitchell, Cato explained the reason for his call. "I can't imagine what you're going through," he said. "I'll be here for you. If you need to talk, give me a call." Mitchell told Reverend Cato that the media were hounding him, loitering outside the house, and calling him at all hours of the day and night. When one reporter had finally cornered him, Mitchell had innocently remarked that the truth will eventually come out. Now, he complained, the reporters seemed to think that he had something to do with the disappearance of the children. The sheriff had actually shot down the rumor that day, insisting at a press conference that Mitchell was not a suspect. Mitchell couldn't really talk now, he explained to the pastor. He was on his way to work. He had third shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. He thanked the minister for calling and said he would be in touch shortly. The next night, at 11:30 p.m., Reverend Cato heard a knock at the door. He'd already gone to bed, but he jumped up and hurried to the front hall. It was Mitchell, his face pale under the porch light. "Preacher, can we pray?" he asked. "Sure," Cato said kindly. "Come on in." "All of us?" Mitchell asked. Cato peered beyond Mitchell and saw a line of cars in the street, headlights shining. "Yes, all of you." One by one, 16 members of the Smith and Russell families and several friends filed silently into Reverend Cato's living room. There was room for only 10 on the couches and chairs. The rest settled on the carpet. Susan and David sat together on the floor, leaning back against the television. For the next 45 minutes, Reverend Cato spoke about God. He told the group about God's grace and the special way God takes care of children. He talked about the soul and the body. Susan told the minister that they would have a celebration when the babies came home. "I'll be there with bells on," he said, smiling. At the end, one member of the group put it plainly. "We want the boys home." The closest David Smith and the rest of his family came to believing the boys would come home was the following morning, when they learned that a child matching Alex's description had turned up in a Seattle motel room. Sheriff Wells had gotten a call at 3:30 a.m. from officers in the Union Police Department. It was one of the first nights since the case began that he'd been home, catching a few hours' sleep. The officer told him about a call they'd received from Seattle police about a 14-month-old white child who matched a lot of the physical description of Alex Smith. A lot of the clothing matches, the officer told him, and the car is a South Carolina vehicle. Wells hung up. "What is it?" Wanda Wells asked. "There's something happening, and it's good, but that's all I can say," he said, his voice more upbeat than it had been for days. "I've got to get dressed and go." Wanda didn't ask anything more. She knew her husband did not discuss details of his cases. In 10 minutes, he'd taken a shower and shaved. She heard his car pull out of the driveway. Wanda lay in bed, wondering about the lead. He'd called it promising. Wanda Wells hoped he was right. The drive to his office took only 5 or 10 minutes. But Sheriff Wells was more anxious than ever to get to his desk and begin making phone calls. Maybe this is what we've been waiting for, he thought, as he pulled into the parking lot. For the next few hours, Wells tried to figure out exactly what was going on in Seattle. Law enforcement officials there were trying to do the same thing. Just before 7 a.m., Wells decided to hold a brief press conference and announce his guarded optimism about a possible break in the case. The reporters phoned their offices to ready the morning news shows for the report. First, Wells called the Russell home. He didn't want the family to hear the news from the television. He told Bev Russell that they had something promising, but he couldn't tell them too much about it. He explained that he was about to give a brief press conference on the morning television news shows and that he would be in touch again as soon as he had more information. Bev thanked the sheriff and quickly shared the news with the rest of the family. For a short time, David Smith thought that his prayers were about to be answered. But the euphoria lasted only briefly. By 10 a.m., word came from Seattle. The child was not Alex. The situation was suspicious. A man driving a car with South Carolina plates, who claimed to be visiting his wife, who lived in Seattle, supposedly left their baby with a motel attendant, who then called police. Sheriff Wells felt worse than he had at any point so far in the investigation. He had been so hopeful. For the first time, he had allowed himself to believe that the children of Susan Smith might be on their way home. He picked up the phone and called Bev Russell. Wells's voice sounded so different than it had 3 hours before. He told Bev that he wanted the family to come in. "I need to give you the details about the early report we had," he said. "It's not going to work out for us, but I'll explain it." When Bev tried to ask questions, Wells cut him off. "I'll explain it all to you at one time." When Howard Wells stepped outside into the sea of cameras and microphones, Wanda knew at once the news was bad. She had been working at her desk at Union Federal Savings Bank, half listening to WBCU, when she heard a press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. As she had for the past 8 days, she slipped out of her office and hurried to the kitchen, where the bank kept a television for its employees. "It's a wonder I don't get fired," she thought, as she waited impatiently for her husband to appear. The bank was just across the street from the city hall, where Wells's office was located, but Wanda preferred to watch her husband on the news. She didn't want to go over there, with all the crowds and reporters. She'd seen Howard more on television this week than she had in person. When Howard Wells stepped up to the microphone, his wife saw right away, by the expression on his face, that the news was not good. She knew him well. "Oh, my goodness," she said softly to herself. "That wasn't the right child." Wells spoke to the press, his voice strained. "New developments in the case are being checked as we speak. They are turning out not to be as promising as first anticipated. Our hopes have been high, but as the time goes by, and we look into the case, there are a lot of similarities. There were a lot of things that really drew us close. Our hearts soared for a while that we were close to recovering the children. That did not happen. We still have communications going on with the other agency, but I am of the belief that it is not going to affect our case. I was hoping it was the one we had been waiting on so long that was going to give us our direction and give us some breathing room that the children were okay and that we could get them back. The family was, like me, very excited. It's very hard when you get your hopes up to come back and see them dashed. In his office, Wells spoke privately to the family, Bev and Linda, David and Susan, Margaret Gregory and her husband, and Scotty and Wendy. They crowded into his cramped office, gathering around his desk. He told them how the information had come in and why they felt it had been promising. Then he told them how too many things were questionable. The bottom line was, the baby was not Alex. When the family emerged from Wells's office, Margaret Frierson and Charlotte Foster were waiting outside. They'd gotten a call about the Seattle tip early that morning from the National Office for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and had immediately driven to Union. But by the time they arrived, their hopes had been ended. After their conversation with the sheriff, David and Susan stepped outside into a blur of cameras and lights. After ducking the press for a week, the young couple finally spoke. Wearing windbreakers, hers white, his navy blue, they stepped forward awkwardly, their family and the sheriff surrounding them. Susan held her glasses and a photo of her sons in her left hand. David slipped his right arm around her waist, while his left hand held on to her left elbow. Susan spoke first, her voice trembling with emotion. I would like to say that whoever has my children, that they please bring them home to us, where they belong. Our lives have been torn apart by the tragic events. I can't express how much they are wanted back home, how much we love them. We miss them. They are our hearts. I have prayed every day. There is not 1 minute that goes by that I don't think about those boys. And I have prayed that whoever has them, that the Lord will let them realize that they are missed and loved more than any children in this world, and that whoever has them, I pray every day that you're taking care of them, and know that we would do anything to help you to get them home back to us. I just can't grasp it enough that we've just got to get them home. That's where they belong, with their mama and daddy. David spoke next, his voice flatter, more monotone than his wife's had been. I would like to take the time to plead to the American public that you please do not give up on these 2 little boys, the search for their safe return home to us, that you continue to look for the car, our children, and for the suspects themselves, that you continue to keep your eyes open, and anything that you see that might help the police, call and let it be known. We ask that you continue to pray for me and my wife and for our family, but most of all, that you continue to pray, that the American public continue to pray for Michael and Alex, that they are returned home safely to their mother and father and the family members who love them so much, that you pray most of all for them, and that they are being taken care of, and that they are safe, and that they will return home safely. For a couple who had shied away from the media for almost a week, the 2 spoke freely. When David had finished his appeal, Susan stepped up to the sea of microphones once more. I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy and this whole family loves you so much. And you guys have got to be strong, because I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay. You've got to take care of yourselves. And your mama and daddy are going to be right here waiting on you when you get home. I love you so much. She paused a moment and then continued. I want to tell a story. The night that this happened, before I left my house that night, Michael did something that he's never done before. He had his pooper pacifier in his mouth, and he came up to me and he took his pooper out. He put his arms around me and he told me, I love you so much, Mama. He's always told me he loved me, but never before. Not without me telling him first. And that was just, I'm holding on to that so much, because it means so much. I love him. I just can't express enough. I have been to the Lord in prayers every day with my family, by myself, with my husband. It just seems so unfair that somebody could take such two beautiful children. And I don't understand. I have put all my trust and faith in the Lord that He's taken care of them, that He will bring them home to us. Margaret Frierson and Charlotte Foster followed the family back to the Russell house. Inside, Margaret met David's mother, Barbara Benson, for the first time. Barbara had driven the 4 hours to Union from Garden City the weekend before. Margaret tried to give the family a boost. It's going to happen, she told them. Yes, we're all disappointed, but there will be another lead. Something else will come up. She reminded them about the many cases she'd worked on where there was nothing, no calls, no leads, nothing. At least people are calling in and care and are willing to make that call, she said. There's nothing worse than those cases where nobody calls. Back at the command center, SLED investigators and FBI agents watched Susan's emotional plea on television. Their scrutiny of the 23-year-old secretary was intensifying. A day earlier, law enforcement officials had searched her Tony Road home for the first time. Today, they would return. As they listened to Susan make her emotional entreaty to the nameless, faceless man who had stolen her heart, her beautiful children, the investigators paid close attention to the words she chose, the catch in her voice. But they noted, despite the emotion of the moment, she could not beckon the tears.
Louis Farrakhan, when he called for the Million Man March.
The 23-year-old secretary was intensifying. A day earlier, law enforcement officials had searched her Tony Road home for the first time. Today, they would return. As they listened to Susan make her emotional entreaty to the nameless, faceless man who had stolen her heart, her beautiful children, the investigators paid close attention to the words she chose, the catch in her voice. But they noted, despite the emotion of the moment, she could not beckon the tears.
Can't even say weeping white woman. Ain't no tears. Now, to be reasonable, accurate to the record, Dave is sitting right next to her. He doesn't appear to be crying either. So, maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. I guess you could say too, he's a white man. It's not manly to be sitting up there for a white man to be, even, under these circumstances, you're supposed to hold it together and be a man. He's got to support her and all that. So I guess maybe David not supposed to be up there weeping and such. But a number of people live time did note that she's not really Steve Harvey even. Really? Is this? The pretend weeping white woman. I guess before they get lachrymose, you got to check. Let's see now. Is she crying? Is she in it? Now, even some people can even do the fake. They can turn the faucets on and all of that, but at least make sure, like, wait a minute, this wench, we ain't got one tear. Wait a minute. You done Susan Smith us here. Sit down. Cut that out. No, you gonna blame it on Leroy next, ain't you? Say Leroy raped you or stole your children or both, took your car. Katherine, Massey, book club. If anything, I can't say Susan Smith is a master deceiver, but I mean, dang. I think the person last week said if she, as opposed to going on TV every day, ooh, Alex, ooh, he grabbed his pooper. She ain't say the pooper. He grabbed his pooper. Mama, I just love it. If she hadn't got all the narcissistic supply and all that attention and everything, if she hadn't done that, she could have just went to the Winn-Dixie and cut a fool. Dang it, Dave. I told you, messing around. I see you back there, messing around with Wendy. I know what you've been doing. I'm tired of it. I ain't gonna put up with it no more. You cheating, all the rest of it. Damn you. If she had done that. Don't talk to me no more. Don't call. We leaving. And peeled out of the parking lot. And then went and drowned the children. Got a bus ticket out of town or bought another vehicle in advance, old clunker, and moved out in the sticks to Oregon or something. It took them a week and a half to find that car, and they needed her to tell them, the police, where it was. They had SLED, all that. This would be another one for the people who said, man, white enforcement officers seem kind of shabby based on the books we've read. This might be another one, depending on how you know. But they didn't find that car until Susan told them where it was. They were confused about that. She could have probably dipped. I think she could have easily got like a 10-year start. How vested do we think Dave would have been in finding these children? If she came in there, acted a fool, we're leaving, he thinks, oh my gosh, she's leaving town. She dipped. She's tired. They divorced anyway, you know. He got another little white woman, whatever. Do you think he would have got a private detective to go track them down? You think he would have taken a month off of Winn-Dixie, follow lead, see if he could found what town she moved to? I think she could have, person that said that last week, I think she could have got away with all of this if she had kept quiet, drown the children, or do it in a quiet way, but drown the children, leave town, change the hair up and everything, move far away, leave the country. She could have got away with that for a long time, especially if she had drowned the children someplace else. It would have taken them a long time to identify and track. This was a long time ago, too, so 30 years. You didn't have Wi-Fi and everything like that. She could have probably got away with all this. Easy. And no racism. We wouldn't have had no Leroy in a toboggan. She could have left all that out. I guess if you're going to commit a crime, maybe sometimes you'd be more successful if you are not lazy and just rely on racism. Katherine, Massey book club. So we'll pick up on chapter 12. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. They say cases where people don't care. What cases would those be? Oh, I don't know. Leroy Jr., little Lakeisha, they go missing. Somebody snatches them up. That might be the type of case where, You gonna watch the Gabby Petito special later on today? Say, little Leroy, what? Gabby Petito, she's blonde. Got whole titles and things that they put on that. But I think I've seen a few of those type cases where doesn't get all this. Good Morning America, they're not going to come and talk to you every morning, see if you can fake cry about your missing Negro toddlers. Email untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. Master deceivers. I will say, because I was going to say she's not, the greatest deceiver, Susan Smith. Man, I don't know how many of you all. Let's take it out of the equation. You don't have to kill your child. Let's not be inhumane. But how many of you all could go and kill somebody, and then you gonna leave the GoFundMe? Sure do miss Roy. Hope he come back. Oh Lord, I sure do love me some Roy. He was the best thing. Before Roy tragically went missing, we had a tender moment. I love a little bit of bok choy, and Roy loved a little bit of bok choy, and we had our matching chopsticks, and Roy put that bok choy down, and he looked at me and he said, Gus T, you all right with me, black brother? And I said, for real, black brother? And Roy said, for real, black brother? And we had a special moment, and Roy, get back, we just gonna have so. Who got the audacity do that? Not in front of the town hall, not to his parents. I'm gonna get in front of the camera to the whole world. I know I done killed Roy yesterday. Watched him drown and everything. He was banging on the window. Hey, what you doing? You got me in a trunk. Hey, yeah, had to do it, Roy. For whatever reason. Whatever, Roy had to go. But you done killed him. You gonna lead the charge. We ain't even factored in the racism part that you gonna blame this on Leroy. We ain't even factored that part in. Just who has the gall? And then not to do this once. Oh, we riding every day. Got a collection bucket and everything. Like, what? What does it mean? That's master deceiver on a horse. She's not even a good liar. And you still got a championship master deceiver. I ain't even got to the racism part. Like, you gonna do all this and then oh yes, Leroy did this. So, Alex, I miss you. We got a new pooper, but Leroy, that dastardly Leroy, he came and carjacked and took my children. He took the pooper too. He took the pooper too. Oh my Lord, if we ever get him, that no good Nick Leroy. Both the deception part of this, what does it mean to be white? And then the racism. Oh, I got to get the trifecta, because white people do not care about children. Shout to Seattle. You heard that? I almost thought, oh my God, Mary Kayla Turner, she got another little one to put. She got a whole collection, a menagerie of rape victims. They said, oh no, this is not. Sorry. Shout to 206. Let's see, folks who dialed in, they have commentary on the first chunk of the reading. Again, did you all, this is another one. You should talk to your parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, if you have neighbors, victims of racism that you have constructive contact with. If they're over the age of 40, maybe even a little bit younger, they should remember this. Like, oh yeah, especially you got contact to South Carolina. Oh yeah, do you remember this case? Do you remember, like, before everything came out, did you think Leroy had took this white girl's children? Did you think? If you are a black person in South Carolina, I would for sure, like, if I had black dudes who were alive when all this went down, what was it like for those 9 days? Did you get stopped by the police? Did you have to go down to the station? Did they come on your, how did the white people treat you? They eyeballing you on the job? What you been doing, Jamal? I told you, you heard Carl Long. He said, they came on my job. And I'm sure he was like the CEO, vice president, right? Of course. Privileged black male. Carl Long said, they came on my job, you know, and said, we need you to come. I'm sorry for laughing. Woo! They said, we need you to come downtown and talk to us about these missing white children. What Negro male wants to go back on their job, even if I was working cleaning toilets at McDonald's? Boy, I'm going to be nervous holding that plunger tomorrow. Oh, I'm about to be fired. They're going to think I stole these white children, Lord. Oh, let me shine these toilets good. Let me shine these and update my resume. Like, I'm going to see if they let me clean the bathrooms at Hardee's or Chick-fil-A, Jack in the Box. And then they'll probably tell him, you know, he had something to do with the missing children. Black male privilege. But if you got older folks, talk to them, see if they remember all of this. Or if you remember, go back through the memory banks. Like, what? Did I follow this all? And this happened in the middle of O.J. Simpson. Woo, 94. The year of the Negro male convict. Killing white women. Stealing white children. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's get it together. Folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share, line should be open. Proceed.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Super predators. That was 94. See, Hillary Clinton had it right. Billy Clinton had it right. They say, see, we're not going to tolerate Jerome, Leroy out here robbing white women, stealing white babies, killing white women. We're tired of Orenthal. Super predator. See, all this was the same time period. Yes, ma'am.
I remember. It's been a while since I called in. Good evening, best of callers. I wrote in last week and said Susan could have definitely dipped. If she hadn't ran to that lady's house, nobody would have been none the wiser. She could drown them kids and kept going. I found it interesting because in past book clubs we talked about how these people have like fan clubs and everything. If you Google Susan Smith now, she was recently up for parole, and apparently all these men started sending her letters because they were interested in her, because they think she's pretty. So she grew into look like what the book is trying to portray what she looked like years ago, because she didn't look like much. They should have known immediately when she didn't want to meet with the sketch artist that something was up, because why aren't you cooperating? I could see if she had to be like medicated because she was just so overwhelmed, but that wasn't the case, and nobody in the family was pushing her toward it. So I'm suspicious whether or not they suspected something was up too, because things don't happen in the vacuum, so somebody would have known that she had a recent breakup or something. Like, there had to be at least a suspicion that the stress of the divorce and being a single parent and being rejected by whomever played a part in her murdering her children, but she never really intended to die. Even when she told the police, "Oh, I wanted to just shoot yourself with my gun," she never made any attempts on her own life, any sincere, honest attempts, even all the years that she's been in prison. So it just seems like these were unwanted children. And the sketch, the side view, what does he look like from the front? And that's probably why she didn't want to participate, because what was she going to make up now? Like, she would have had to put those features together, and her story would have fallen apart a little faster than it did. So that's my commentary. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'll mute my line.
That's a great point about the sketch. She said, if she had been asked to do the sketch again, we're going to give a frontal view this time. Like, whoa. Can I see the Fat Albert episode again? Because we said he looks like dumb Donald. I put the photos up last week so you can see them together, but man, that is interesting. If the family, because it was so many white people who we heard, Dot and the rest of these folks who they said, the family know her even better. So, and for them to go along with it, like, that's a great point. Why wouldn't the family be like, hey, we want our grandchildren back, we want our cousins back, or whatever, we want the children back, get it together, cooperate, let's go do the sketch, maybe that'll help. They'll figure out where this no count nigger is, and we can, get the babies back. Come on, man. That would make logical sense. Why would they go along with this? Like, oh, no. We're not doing no more sketches. Why? Why would they do that? I said, white family would know her even better than the white neighbors and strangers. I mean, they've seen all this up close and personal for a long time. All the details, the divorce, everything else. They've heard her talking about she doesn't want children, anything. What would life be like without these children? And blah, blah. Even the racism, dare I say. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Oh, goodness, sorry about that. I hope everybody is having the best evening that they can have. Thank you for letting me speak. Just a couple things. The way the people automatically just thought, well, she didn't do anything, bad to him. She got him hid somewhere. Only reason why they thought that because she's a white woman. Your white woman drowning her own children. I mean, they don't like children, but I think they just went ahead with that little story because, I don't know, because she was white. And then the lie she told about her son taking his passy out and saying, all of that stuff. She wasn't doing nothing but lying. And the flunky lady that kept stopping the sketch artist at the walkway, like, nope, no more, you're out of here. She doesn't want to talk to you. That, like the other caller just said, that would be a bunch of suspicion. Why don't you want to talk to a better sketch artist? Because she up there lying. And the family members, yep, just like y'all said, why ain't y'all doing more? You don't want your grandchildren back? You don't want your little nieces and nephews? It's just a mess, and white people don't care about children. I mean, my life.
Mary Kay, Susan Smith. I mean, we could branch out and get the big groups as well. Boy Scouts, Catholic Church, because they say Mary Kay was Catholic, whatever that means. Like, you branch out and get those too. But I mean, hey, white people, do not. Katherine, Massey Book Club. Other folks who that Devontae. Should almost say his name every time we say that. Remember those lesbian racists? Devontae other folks who dialed in with the hand up.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Lauren.
Okay. Evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I missed last week, so I just kind of wanted to say a couple of things from last week's session. At the beginning of session 1, when it was being described how Susan interacted with the children when people were around, it made me ask myself, how did Susan Smith treat the children when no other people were around? But I guess nobody will be able to know the answer to that question except maybe the husband, David Smith. And also it said, on Sunday, Susan usually took her sons to church at Buffalo Methodist, attending the same service as her mother and stepfather. Throughout the service, little Alex stayed in the nursery, happily playing on the orange plastic slide. Michael, however, was old enough to attend the part of the service geared towards children. He would toddle down the aisle past his mother and grandparents and sit at Reverend Long's knee at the altar. He listened patiently as the minister gave the squirming children a brief lesson from the Bible. And it said Michael was old enough, but that child was like 3. So they had a church service geared towards 3-year-olds? That was really interesting. And there was something else about the church. When they were describing it, it was like they had put 3 or 4 different denominations all in one church. And, I thought to myself, that usually doesn't happen. It will be the Pentecostals or the Lutherans or whatever. They'll group themselves together. But I guess it wasn't enough white people to warrant that. So they were like, we'll just all go to the same church. And this is what I thought. What mattered is that they were all white people, not the kind of so-called Christians that they said they were. Later in the text, it said Susan's dream of stability and love still eluded her. While Tom Finlay liked Susan Smith, he swiftly began to feel that she was too possessive, too needy. As quickly as it had begun, the relationship was over. And then it said Susan enjoyed working for a powerful man in a prestigious company. Conso was exciting and the opportunity seemed boundless. Something else happened at Conso. Susan Smith fell in love hard. And it said something else, but I think Susan Smith, so-called fallen in love hard, in her perception that she had boundless opportunities, those were completely related. And I think it's reasonable to think she saw Tom as an opportunity. Let me see. So from this week, the audio at the beginning, she said, I allowed my children to go down that ramp without me. That makes it seem like the children decided to go down the ramp and jump in the water on their own. Not she, Susan Smith, took that action and let that car roll into the water, she did that knowing she was killing those children. That was active. It was an action. It didn't just happen. She made that decision. And the way she said it, it was passive. Let me see. Oh, somebody else was talking before the actual book started, and they said we have our separate divisions and whatnot football teams. And I was wondering if he was saying that there was a white football team and a black one. I don't know if that's what he meant. So this week, it said SLED agents in camouflage walked in and out, half-eaten sandwiches lay strewn on desks. I don't understand why the SLED agents were wearing camouflage. It might seem unimportant, but it just seems kind of weird and unnecessary. The parts where the lady, Jeannie, was talking about memory and, I think that was accurate, how imperfect memory is and all the things that can affect memories. And she was telling these law enforcement officers, the actual image of the perpetrator, if there was one, that begins to distort with exposure to as few as 12 photographs. It's an archaic method, and once the information is gone, it's gone. And then, the law enforcement officer was like, well, I don't think we do it like that. They use the FBI facial identification catalog. And, that's exactly what she was talking about. But when I read that part, I thought to myself, many law enforcement officers, I don't think they really want, well, I'll say this, I don't think they actually care if the person that they arrest is the actual culprit. I think they just want to find someone to blame and get a guilty verdict, especially if it's like a black male. They don't care. It's so strange, Mark said. It seems to me they are putting Susan ahead of the children's welfare. There's no time to waste. You have to find the children as fast as possible. They're making all the wrong moves. Well, wrong moves. I guess it depends on what the goal objective is. Was that to protect Susan, or was the goal objective to find the children? He's assuming that they wanted to find the children. Also, so it was Jeannie got the phone call, the voicemail from Tracy Wright. And the young woman said with a thick Southern accent, "I'm taking media calls for Susan Smith. Susan is ready to work with you to develop a caricature of the abductor." And then Tracy left a number for Jeannie to call. I thought the word caricature was pretty, that was an interesting word choice. Not drawing, but caricature. And that's not authentic. Character, it's kind of fake. Let me see. Russell, Mark was talking to Russell. This is David's father. And he told Mark that he was so worried about the children that nobody in the Russell home wanted to do anything or really fight for the kids. And I thought that comment right there, I thought that was notable. Give me a second, guys. Okay. Where they got the tip from Seattle, and it was a man driving a car with South Carolina plates who claimed to be visiting his wife who lived in Seattle, and he supposedly left their baby with a motel attendant who then called the police. I just wondered who would leave their baby with a complete stranger like that. That was so weird. And also, it was one child, not two. Why did they think that was Susan Smith's children? When she did the press conference, it said Susan held her glasses and a photo of her sons in her left hand. To me, that makes it seem like Susan Smith was more concerned with her appearance than actually seeing with her eyes what was going on around her. I did think, when she was talking, the way she spoke, the words she chose, the way she was practicing deception, she really was not an effective liar. I didn't know, she said, "I just feel in my heart that you're okay. You've got to take care of yourself, and your mama and daddy are going to be here waiting on you when you get home. I love you so much." How can a 3-year-old and an infant take care of themselves? That doesn't even make sense. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Well, love, that's all you need is love. A teaspoon of love goes a long way. With the camo, she said she didn't understand why the SLED investigators, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, I think it's or department, either same thing really, but she said she didn't understand why they were wearing camo. My suspicion would be twofold, and I could be totally in error. One, this is rural South Carolina, lots of hunting, and then, which is really in line with the same thing, rural hunting. I suspect, since these are white law enforcement officers, that there is probably a strong military background for a substantial number of these folks. So that would be the twofold camo. Military personnel probably transition to law enforcement, and then this is big time hunting area. So, we got our shotgun out in the Jeep ready to go get a buck once we get off the shift. Just my guess. I could be in error. And maybe you already had some of the paramilitary creep by this point of the mid-90s. This is 2 years after the LA riots, so maybe the paramilitary creep was in full swing. That's 3. Great point about the use of the term caricature by Tracy Wright when Susan allegedly is going to, let's go ahead and do the sketch of the carjacking negro. Caricature, definition, picture, description, or imitation of a person in which certain striking characteristics are exaggerated in order to create a comic or more grotesque effect. And even give you the second, a ludicrous or grotesque version of someone or something. He looked like a caricature of his normal self. In fact, even the person who said that this sketch looks like the caricature from Fat Albert, Dumb Donald. Whew, man, I put it up side by side. I shared it on my social media. Try to use social media constructively, but I did that last week. Like, man, that, like, for reals, if they were gonna do, all right, let's do second sketch. Let's second sketch. Okay. We're gonna do a frontal view. Let me see. Can I see Fat Albert? Y'all have Fat Albert? Let me get. I think they got that on Netflix. Let me see Fat Albert real quick, and I can see. That's it. Okay, that's it. I'm ready. Grotesque, indeed. Let's see. *61 if you have commentary to share. I will nab an email. Let's see. Email number 1. Hi, Gus and Cal's audience. Number 1, finding out that police undertake dual investigations of family members in child abduction cases reveals a lot about the system of white supremacy. I don't know. I thought that was standard operating procedure. Now this, I don't know, could be, I don't know. I've been, as someone who has been now for over a decade, been saying white people do not care about children, I almost feel like, yes, I should know that this is standard operating procedure. I don't know. I don't think we've done a lot of child abduction cases on the cows. The Hearts, I guess that's one I can think of. I have to think on it for a minute. It seems like we haven't done a lot, but maybe we've done more than I'm aware of. Either way, yes, this is very standard, and I think it's because in so many of the cases, this is what it is. Now, maybe they don't blame it on Leroy and all this, like, elaborate lying, but this is generally what it is. Way, way more often than Leroy. She continues, it surprised me, but it shouldn't have. Although I have no evidence, I'm going to guess that it's mainly white parents who commit this type of crime. I think that's true, like, overwhelmingly. White people do not care about children, so it stands to reason many of the parents of missing children will be the ones responsible, and that's the exact code that law enforcement have. Like, we make sure that that's not the case before we go out here chasing Leroy, because so often, no, you did this, the parents. That's why John Benet Ramsey case, so many people immediately, that was just like 2 years after all this, Colorado, and to this day still think the parents, had something to do with all this. 2, last week someone asked that's another one, because we had the author on, we talked about that. So that's why I said, I guess we've done more of the child abduction cases than I realized. 2. Last week, someone asked what an executive party is. I think this means a party for senior managers in a company, CEO, and other top executives. I've worked in organizations that will have full staff parties, then separate ones for senior executives. 3. Why was Margaret shielding Susan? Did she suspect Susan murdered her children? I wonder. Now we have several folks who think this could be, and I mean, at minimum, why would you be directing her to not cooperate with the investigation? Why? That's suspicious. There should be some, questions about that. 4. Yep. Dave's father said slowly, his face drawn with pain. No one in the Russell home wanted to do anything or really fight for the kids. He agreed that the family should take advantage of the intense media coverage. Susan's family knew she was a murderer, and apparently David's father thought the same. They would know better than the neighbors. 5. Preacher, can we pray? He asked. One by one, 16 members of the Smith and Russell families and several friends filed silently into Reverend Cato's living room. Susan and David sat together on the floor. For the next 45 minutes, Reverend Cato spoke about God. This is some cold, sociopathic, attention-seeking, narcissistic shenanigans. Bad enough that she murdered her children, but she's also content to watch people around her suffer, and to hold their hand and lie in their face while doing so. That's what I mean. And she's not even a good liar. I think some other folks, some of you all said that, and I agree, but I mean, just because she's not world-class deceiver, wow. The audacity alone, wow. I would not even in my brain computer, come up with a lie this enormous, sinful, and then even, come on, then I'm going to get on TV every day with my bad, come on. 6. A man leaves a different child of 14 months old with a receptionist at a motel. Wow, I kind of need to know the story. Was that child kidnapped? And worse, white people don't. Right, that's what I said. It's so much just much like Mary Kay. And I said this last book, I said we can put Veely to the side. He's a man-child and part mulatto and maybe even negro, so whatever. And he kind of raped her, so whatever. What about her white children? What about all the children in the classroom? What about the 14-year-old that she kicked, Molly, that she kicked to the curb and was going to get raped in the Asian gang here in Seattle, and on and on and on? What about all of that? That's what I mean. This one too, we got all the other children. They even mentioned that last week. Cora Jones in Wisconsin, 12-year-old, killed by a white man and a white serial killer in a racially restricted region of Wisconsin. That was just kind of a casual mention last week, and they included Dahmer, who I guess we have read about a lot of child abductions, because that's what he did. Non-white too. But it's so many. It's not just one. That's why that's when I started saying that. It's not just Sandy Hook, and it's not just Columbine. It's not just Evergreen. That's the one from Jefferson County just days ago. It's so many of these. They're so widespread. I would like to know more about that, since that was in Seattle. What happened with that case? 7. Wells was extremely inappropriate to announce that was a break in the case without finding out the facts. It's shoddy police work and insensitive for the relatives who did care about those children. Now, I guess there have been a number of critiques about the enforcement officer's conduct. Maybe he just got excited, He was hoping that, we get these little rascals and move on and get rid of Susan Smith for a little while and just, God disappointed. Got too excited. Should have stayed on code. But either way, I totally agree. Let's not get ahead of ourselves and I think someone else had already said this. Like, if it's two children, I think that was Lauren. Why would they think, and all the way on the other side of the continent, why would they think this is related to this case? What do they think happened to the other child along the way? Yeah, at minimum, I'm not going to get excited about this one until we get like a lot more details. And even then, why is this something to be excited about? Where's the other child at? Like, what in the world? Great points, great points. Let's see. *61 if you have commentary before we get to the chapter 12 second audio reading. Let me see. Going back to look at my notes as well. And I think the caller who wrote in last week, and she was saying, so Susan Smith, after her children have been stolen by negro, she goes to seek sanctuary with the white man who molested her stepdad? Yes. Which will work out in her favor once we get to the trial phase of all this, but that's getting ahead. Let's see. Went too far back. Alrighty. Lots of interesting metaphors. When Margaret Gregory is the name of the, white woman who's doing all the blocking, like, nope, not doing no interviews and get on out of here. She says it's like talking to someone with no ears. Susan's not seeing anyone, no matter what, even if it's not I thought that was interesting too. Even if it's not an appropriate response, like there's some level of acknowledging what you all have said. Like, there is something suspicious about you not cooperating to find these children. Like, yes, that might be. And it's not changing our decision at all. Now, beat it. Like, wow, okay. Let's see. When she says she's hearing the SLED agents, people are calling in to volunteer. Now, again, if this had been Devontae who was missing, would they have had this avalanche of people dialing in? Can we volunteer? Can we make coffee? Can we make grits? Can we go out searching? Anything. We'll do something. Would it have been this if this had been a missing black child? And then she says, man, this is stunning, appalling, really. They're telling the volunteers, we have nothing for you to do. Thanks for your call. Nothing for you to do. She said, what are you all, this how you find the face? Blah, blah, blah. To me, that just says, we know this heifer is lying. And unless you can come in here and help us get this wench to confess, no, there's nothing for you to do. We have already looked, and Jerome ain't out there, Leroy ain't out there with no stolen white children. We know she is lying. There's nothing for you to volunteer to do. Thank you. But they can't say all that. That's what I think it is. That's why because they immediately pivot to ask her, hey, look here, forget the volunteers. Do you know when someone is lying? She says, oh yeah, for sure. That's what we need. We don't need no volunteers. Let's see. American Journal, they did a segment on Mary Kay Letourneau as well. It was included in Greg Olson's book. He talks about them coming to talk to Veely's family and all that. And then, of course, they did this case too. And then, of course, the reporter, she's going to hide her hair. She has to hide her blonde hair. To be a successful white journalist, do you have to have blonde hair? the white woman who she did the O.J. Simpson, and Nancy Grace. That's it, Nancy Grace. She's blonde. She talked to Tina Scarborough way back when Sade was first murdered in 2024. Nancy Grace. Yeah. Let's see. David's dad had been saying all along, I think I played audio of him previously, where he said when he was first told about all of this, that some Negro took the children and all that, and he was like, what? She doesn't have the car in her hand? Like, what? Like, he seemed like he was in the group of, I did not believe this from the very beginning. We don't even live in the part of town where Negroes be doing carjackings. Like, do what? Like, he thought she was lying about this from the very beginning. And since so many people said it, that people thought she was lying. They didn't think she had killed the children. They thought she had stashed them with a relative or something of that nature. They're going through a divorce, and so they just think, okay, yeah, she's lying. They're not dead. They're just hidden out someplace. Other people said that too. I don't know if that'll come up in the book or not, but many people, took that opinion. It seems certainly, dare I say, almost leaning into white people don't care about children again, but like, they said if she had been black, so if this had been Lakeisha, and they think Lakeisha, she wasn't carjacked, she has the children are with her grandma stashed somewhere or another relative, they're fine. I don't think they're dead. I just think she's got them. Would they have thought this and gone along with this whole lie if Lakeisha had done that? I will certainly get. Maybe they thought, since she's young white woman, suspected racist. Maybe they thought, yeah, she's going through this messy divorce thing, and we don't want to snitch on. No snitching. So we don't want to rat her out, snitch on her. So it'll all resolve itself. It'll take care. I don't want to go in. You lying wench. Whatever. They'll figure it out, and the children will be fine, and we'll be able to move up. Maybe that's what they were thinking. Although they would not have thought that way if it had been a black female. Let's see. So get the wrong child. Pitiful police work again. All of the lying is staggering, and I'm conceding she's not a quality deceiver, but I mean, what they say, Hitler, he's credited with saying, the bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. This is a pretty massive lie, because there's so many I was carjacked, and a nigger did it, and he took the children. And then I'm going to go on for days with all this. And the children, when they come back, and we're going to be a family again, and then go into just every day line to all these people all over the world and on TV. Beyond, none of that is true. I killed the children. And out here, we just want them back. Ooh, I wish I could die. Y'all got an onion by chance? Wish I could cry. Get a few tears. Boy, I get me a few tears out here. I walk out with $10,000. They might even give me another week of being free. What does it mean to be white? Illustrated in many different ways throughout this here text. We will get to it. If you have additional thoughts, write them down. We should have ample time once the second audio segment concludes. Mr. Fuller's term, Mother Superior. Susan Smith. She was only 23. Her brain computer is not even fully developed at this point. And she's put on massive lies. Nationwide lies. Audio segment number 2, Maria Eftimiades, The Sins of the Mother, Katherine Massey Book Club, audio segment to
12. Now that Sheriff Wells and his team of investigators, SLED's chief, Robert Stewart, SLED behavioral specialist, David Caldwell, Pete Logan, a retired FBI agent, now an investigator for SLED, and Jim Oppie, special agent in charge of South Carolina, had concluded that Susan Smith was lying about her children. They faced a daunting task, proving it and uncovering the truth. They continued to interview Susan daily, and gradually began to suggest to her that while they wanted to believe her story, they couldn't. Early on in the interrogations, one of the investigators flatly accused Susan of doing in her children. Her reaction stunned the men. The docile, weeping girl, who kept praying for God to look out for my babies, suddenly turned angry, shouting at her accuser. Susan's peppery comeback taught them two things: that Susan Smith was not just a sweet, broken-hearted mother, but also a strong-willed young woman, and that this hardened suspect would be tough to crack. Her story about the carjacking had plenty of holes: the red light, the absence of cars at the intersection, her conflicting stories about where she was going that night and where she had been, and ultimately, that the burgundy Mazda never turned up. The problem was, said one senior investigator, it was nothing that could be proven. It just didn't ring right. We knew she was lying about it. Because the investigators could not prudently ignore Susan's possible culpability from the start, and because they felt that she had probably acted alone, the team had to consider that the car, and maybe the children, were somewhere within walking distance of the McLeod house. We kept going back to within 2 miles of the McLeod place, says an investigator. We couldn't understand why we didn't find that car. From the start, the men carried out a meticulously planned interrogation campaign to gradually break down Susan Smith's defenses and encourage her to confess. Every day's movements were carefully scripted. There were no ad-libbed entrances, no casual questions to Susan that had not been planned beforehand. To some extent, Pete Logan and Sheriff Wells served as the good cops. Logan, a graying grandfatherly type, spoke gently to Susan, yet shrewdly managed to manipulate her into trusting him at the same time. The interrogators hoped to build on Susan's trust in them, to coax her into confessing, and they were careful never to push her too hard. If they did, they feared, she might become defensive and clam up, or, worse yet, commit suicide. They knew of her past attempts at killing herself, and they knew if she died, they might never find the children. All still fervently hoped the boys would be found alive, but, in their hearts, they knew that wish seemed less and less likely to come true. The strongest tool against Susan's steadfast claim that she, indeed, was a victim of a carjacker was psychology. Investigators met several times a day, often with technical experts like Caldwell, to consider the next move. The timing was everything: what we were going to do, when we were going to do it, who would be responsible, an investigator said. Investigators met with Susan at 2 different locations, so-called safe houses, away from the prying eyes of the media. Reporters kept trying to read their actions. It wouldn't help if they began asking why investigators continued to question Susan. They moved the command post into a Union recreation center at one point, and then to another location later. After the first confrontation with Susan, right after she told the carjacking story failed to break her, Logan, 59, met daily with Susan, talking gently to her and asking her to go over and over the events of October 25th. After each conversation, he would hook her up to the polygraph and test her. She routinely failed the most critical question: do you know where your children are? On more than one occasion, investigators felt sure Susan was about to break. She would stop her conversation, lay her head on her arms on the table, and sit, silent and still. She showed a lot of characteristic traits of one who was about to break, one of the investigators said. But then Susan would abruptly sit upright, and steadfastly repeat her story. The behavioral specialists who analyzed Susan Smith began to put together a profile of a cool, cunning woman with a strong drive to succeed. Early on in the investigation, Tom Finley had provided the investigators with a copy of the letter he had sent to Susan, ending their relationship. He told them Susan had reacted vindictively to his rebuff, with a bitterness that surprised him. With this information, and their own first-hand knowledge of her angry outburst when confronted with their early suspicions, investigators began to put together a possible motive, that greed and ambition had pushed her to rid herself of her children. It was SLED's David Caldwell who designed a series of ploys for Pete Logan to use in lengthy conversations he had with Susan Smith almost daily. Several of the ploys would be used over the course of the week-long interrogation as part of their efforts to pressure Susan into confessing. One of the team's first ideas was to develop a no-holds-barred media blitz. Of course, already, Union was teeming with reporters. Satellite trucks choked Main Street, and friends and family of Susan and David Smith were being inundated with requests for interviews. The tabloids, both print and television, offered money for information, and the story, it seemed, couldn't get any more attention. But while reporters from all over the country chased the story, some of the coverage was being carefully crafted by the team of investigators. On Tuesday night, November 1st, exactly 1 week after Susan made her claims about the carjacker, Wells met with dozens of reporters in the parking lot of the courthouse. His timing seemed symbolic. His words were carefully chosen, impeccably planned. And no mistake about it, they were directed to one specific listener, Susan Smith. "I don't know that we're any closer to finding the car," he began. "I have nothing encouraging. We're following old information that we've just not gotten to. I don't think it's developed into anything as of yet to be any more excited about than yesterday." He talked about the abductor, the man whose phone call he said he awaited. "I'm waiting right now, hopefully to hear from the abductors," Wells told the group. "I will talk with him directly. I will go to where he is, or I will go to where I can find the children. I'm open to suggestions right now, and I'm hoping he will call. This case has grown to such a degree that if this abductor has seen the amount of attention that has been placed on it, that he would be frightful of how to handle himself, or what to do, or even to move right now. We're still taking it as we did at the beginning, as a random carjacking. We do not know why the subject was interested in this particular car, or if it had any bearing whatsoever, why the abductor would be at this particular location, or even if he was one of our own citizens or not. We are following different scenarios. If it was a single abductor, what would be necessary to keep us from finding the vehicle, and where he might be? We've looked at scenarios that would involve 2 abductors, and we've looked at scenarios that would involve more than 2 abductors, trying to figure out what their plan of action might have been, how far they were willing to go to secrete this vehicle, or where they may be at this time. Sheriff Wells looked intently into the cameras. It's very easy to believe Susan Smith, that one person took her at gunpoint, but it's also reasonable to believe that maybe someone else also was involved, who was picked up later, or someone else was waiting to be picked up, or someone else assisted in hiding the car. When I say 2 or more people, it does not mean anything different than what she said, that one took the car. I wish I could tell you right now that I had something that made me very confident and had taken some of the burden off of our hearts. But as of right now, I don't have anything that gives me a great deal of relief. I can't say that anything is very promising at this time. In the investigators' plan to intensify the media spotlight and unnerve Susan Smith, one unwitting participant was none other than Shirley MacLeod. On the Tuesday that Sheriff Wells faced the press, Roger Gregory, the captain of the sheriff's department, called Shirley MacLeod. He told her that the sheriff had asked if she would be willing to be interviewed for a segment to be shown that weekend on the syndicated television show, America's Most Wanted. The program would highlight the carjacking case and, hopefully, bring in the tip they needed to find Susan Smith's children. Shirley was not pleased about the idea of telling her story on television, but she tried to hide her lack of enthusiasm. She told the captain she would do it. The America's Most Wanted people came that night, setting up a makeshift studio in the McLeod's den. Shirley had asked the captain to be there for the taping, and he was. In fact, he, too, was interviewed on the show. Like Shirley, the captain said that he did not believe Susan Smith had done anything to her children. If the investigators were so sure by then that Susan was lying to them, why tape a show insisting on her innocence? It is likely that they were hoping that the more media attention given to the story of the missing children, the more pressure would be brought to bear on Susan, and the more likely she would break down. Their next step was appealing to the carjacker publicly. The investigators arranged for calls to go out to a handful of the city's most influential ministers. They were all asked to gather on the steps of the courthouse on Thursday evening to make an emotional plea to the man who stole Susan Smith's babies. Reverend Long was invited, as was Reverend Cato. The Reverend A.J. Brackett came to represent St. Paul Baptist Church. In all, almost 20 clergymen were asked to meet at the steps of the courthouse. They all said they would be there. During the second week of the search, SLED's David Caldwell came up with the most elaborate ploy of all. Investigators reportedly would use desktop publishing to print up what would appear to be an authentic newspaper story about a young mother who had killed her children, then served a short sentence, and had, on release, made a fine new life for herself by marrying a wealthy physician. A photograph of a policewoman Susan didn't know would be used as an illustration of the woman. It was aimed at convincing Susan to confess and take her medicine in expectation of a good life to follow. They never used the ruse. The America's Most Wanted piece never aired. And the Union ministers, who gathered that day in front of all the cameras at the courthouse, but did not have an opportunity to appeal to the carjacker. Because just after 3 p.m. on Thursday, November 3rd, Susan Vaughn Smith confessed to the murder of her 2 children. 13. On the day Susan Smith admitted to rolling her car into John D. Longlake, her 2 boys trapped in their car seats, she began the morning by proclaiming defiantly on all 3 network morning shows that she had had nothing to do with the disappearance of her children. She and David were up by 5 that day, getting ready for the invasion of television cameras into the living room of the Russell home. They sat together on the couch, holding hands. Susan did most of the talking. "I don't think any parent could love my children more than I do, and I would never even think about doing anything that would harm them," she said. "The truth has been told. I know what the truth is, and I did not have anything to do with the abduction of my children. It's painful to have the finger pointed at you when it's your children. Whoever did this is a sick and emotionally unstable person. I can't imagine why anyone would want to take our children." On CBS this morning, anchor Harry Smith asked David if he believed Susan. "I believe my wife totally," David said softly. Added Susan, "It hurts to know that I may be accused. I do not understand why they would do what they are doing. Our lives have been torn apart by this tragic event. I can't express how much they are wanted back home." Shortly after the broadcast, a family member called the Union Daily Times, canceling an exclusive interview and photo shoot they'd promised reporter Anna Brown and photographer Tim Kimsey. Susan and David had had enough media pressure for the day. The couple, exhausted, retired to a back bedroom for a nap. Susan's friend from Conso, Tony Horn, dropped by briefly on her lunch hour. "They've just got to find my babies," Susan told her. "They've got to bring my babies back." Around 12:30 p.m., Susan Smith left the Russell home. She told David she was going to drop off some letters. She did not tell him that Sheriff Wells had sent for her to take her to another safe house for yet another round of questioning by interrogators. In the dining room of the Russell house, Margaret Frierson and Charlotte Foster were manning phones and discussing the possibility of arranging for Charles David Smith, David's father, to speak on NBC's Dateline show. They were also sorting through the dozens of requests the family and the Adam Walsh Center had received from strangers, offering to put up reward money for the safe return of Michael and Alex Smith. Margaret had asked Sheriff Wells about setting up a reward, but he had asked her to wait. "Not right now," he told her. "At this point in the investigation, we don't want to do it." For a few days, Margaret put off answering the requests, but by Thursday, she felt she could no longer wait. Out of respect for the donors, she needed to respond to their generous offers. Margaret planned to write an individual letter to each person who called or wrote in, explaining that they did not plan to set up a reward fund now, but might in the future. She would ask the donors to let them know in writing how much money they would be able to give. A little past 3 p.m., Margaret and Charlotte explained the situation to David, Bev, and Linda. They told the family they would be working out of their Columbia office for the rest of the day. The family said they understood and thanked them for coming. Just before they left, Margaret and Charlotte said goodbye to Doug and Susan Smith, David's uncle and aunt. Doug Smith is Charles David Smith's brother. They had all been staying at Susan and David's Tony Road house since the children disappeared. But with so little progress in the search for Michael and Alex, Doug and Susan were preparing to return home to Michigan. They promised to fly back to South Carolina at a moment's notice if there were any developments in the case. The Russell house was filled as usual. Susan's brother, Scotty Vaughn, was there, but his wife, Wendy, was not. After a week's leave of absence, she had finally gone back to work. Several women from Buffalo United Methodist Church had arrived in the afternoon, carrying trays of hot food for the family. Some of the local ministers were on their way to the Russells. They planned to give the family a brief summary of their upcoming appeal to the carjacker. By now, the family had seen that afternoon's edition of the Union Daily Times. In an interview, Shirley MacLeod had spoken out in defense of Susan, insisting that Susan's panic the night of October 25th was genuine, and that she was thoroughly convinced that Susan Smith was telling the truth. Shirley had tried to duck the interview, but reporter Anna Brown had persisted. "Shirley, everybody's been saying Susan said this or that, but you know what she said that night," Anna had told her. "You could set the story straight for the people of Union." Shirley had given in. She had decided Anna was probably right, but she had made one request. She wanted to see the article before it ran. Anna agreed, faxing her an early version. Shirley read it over carefully, making a few minor changes. When she was satisfied, she gave Anna the go-ahead. Once again, Shirley MacLeod faced the public and defended the young woman whose trembling face she'd held tenderly in her hands on that horrible night. It was, Shirley MacLeod had ultimately decided, her responsibility to fight for Susan. As the days passed and no word of the little boys emerged, Shirley could not forget how frail and lost Susan had seemed that night, her body trembling as she sat hunched over on Shirley's couch, sobbing with her head ducked practically between her knees. Others didn't know, Shirley reasoned. They weren't in the living room at 9 o'clock that Tuesday. They didn't see what Shirley saw. And so, the stalwart face of a trusting Shirley MacLeod made the front page of the local newspaper the very day that Susan Smith broke down and said that everything had been a lie. Investigators will not reveal what they said to Susan Smith on the afternoon of November 3, 1994, but it appears that their unremitting pressure, the media bombardment, and, perhaps, a touch of her own conscience, had at last pushed Susan Smith over the edge. They also reportedly confronted her with all the inconsistencies in her story, and told her they planned to go public with their suspicions. Then Wells went in to talk privately to Susan. After so many hours of meetings and strategy sessions, even the investigators found themselves a bit surprised when Susan Smith at last admitted the terrible fate she had brought on her 2 young sons. Susan had seemed much the same as she showed up for questioning that day. Dressed in jeans and a hooded sweatshirt, she hadn't appeared particularly agitated when the sheriff arranged for her to be picked up at the Russell home that afternoon. But something within her had clearly changed. Within 2 hours, Susan Smith began to tell Sheriff Howard Wells what happened on the night of October 25th. Susan Smith talked about the crushing isolation she felt as she drove her Mazda along the dark highway, consumed by the desire to end her life. She had left home that evening, planning to drive around for a while and then take the boys to her mother's house. But the bad feelings inside her soul ached so much. No one, she felt, could help her. And nothing could be worse than how she felt at that very moment. Susan talked about how wrong her whole life seemed, and how she could not escape the torment she felt inside. She tallied the ills in her life, recalling events as far back as the abortion she'd had while she was in high school. Susan told the investigators about Tom Finley, how much she loved him, how badly it hurt that he didn't love her back. She admitted to them that she had done something to him after he'd ended their relationship. Something she believed was so awful, she was convinced that he could never love her. In her confession, Susan Smith maintained that she pulled off Highway 49 onto the dark, windy road that led to John D. Longlake, because she was ready to die. As for her children, Susan said that she believed they would be better off with her, with God, than left motherless and alone. In her plan, it would be the 3 of them, Susan, Michael, and Alex. They would die together. Susan told the investigators that she tried to end their lives that night. She put the car in neutral and let it roll down the boat ramp. But then she stopped. She tried again, and again she stopped. She told them she got out of the car, overcome with grief, racked with pain. All the time, the babies slept so peacefully in the back seat, not a sound from either one of them. Susan Smith avowed that she had reached the lowest point in her life. It was then that she reached into the car and released the emergency brake. During her confession, Susan repeatedly told the authorities that she loved her sons, that she never meant for this to happen, and that she was so very, very sorry. After it had happened, she told them, she wanted so badly to take back what she'd done, but she knew that wasn't possible. And so she ran, screaming hysterically. When she wound up on the front porch of Shirley and Rick McLeod's house, her alibi was already in the works. Keeping the terrible secret these 9 days had been torture, she insisted. Watching the pain her parents were suffering, the agony endured by David and his parents, cut her deeply. She said she was scared, but admitted that she always knew that her story would eventually collapse, that the truth of what she did that night at the lake would inevitably emerge. Now that it had, Susan Smith felt enormously relieved. For Sheriff Howard Wells, Susan Smith's confession confirmed what in his heart he'd already known, that she had indeed killed those precious boys. Yet, as he listened to her talk, the brutality of her actions rendered him almost unable to speak. For a moment, he was paralyzed by his horror of what Susan had done. But only for a moment. There was so much to do, not a moment to waste. After 9 days of nothing but theories, speculations, and questions, Sheriff Howard Wells had finally gotten some answers. Now, the next step was to confirm them. Outside Susan's earshot, Wells met with SLED Chief Robert Stewart and FBI agent Jim Obby. The men, their faces drawn with sadness after learning of the grim news, hunkered down to strategize their next pivotal steps. They contrived a plan for confirming Susan's story and then breaking the news to the family. They called the divers they would need to scour the bottom of John D. Long Lake, the patrol units they would need to block off the road to the lake while they conducted their search. The family, they knew, would need to be told of Susan's confession in person, but they didn't want to deliver the sad news until they had made sure that the Mazda and the 2 Smith boys were indeed resting in those murky waters. And they knew the always difficult task of informing a family about the death of a loved one would be complicated by the glare of the media. Reporters and camera crews would swarm to the crime scene as soon as word got out. The citizens of Union, anxious to know what was going on, would likely not be far behind. Once their plan was in motion, Union County Sheriff Howard Wells left Susan in the custody of SLED agents and stepped outside into the sunshine. He got into his car and drove directly to the lake, traveling along Highway 49. It was, in essence, the same drive he'd made 9 days before, when he responded to Rick McLeod Jr.'s frantic call. He didn't think about that now, about the irony of the words emitted from the radio that night. Wells did not know what would happen over the next few hours. It had been 9 long days since the lawman had taken on the toughest case of his career, a case that had catapulted him into a national spotlight. Now, the end of the investigation was approaching, the worst finish he could have imagined. Soon he would have almost all the answers to the questions that dogged him for so long. Except, of course, the most commanding one. Why? He wondered if even Susan knew. By the time Wells left the safe house, Susan had been handed a pen and a notebook and been asked to put her confession in writing. She filled 2 pages with her carefully crafted script, rounding off her letters with neat flourishes and drawing in little hearts whenever she wanted to use the word heart. When I left my home on Tuesday, October 25th, I was very emotionally distraught. I didn't want to live anymore. I felt like things could never get any worse. When I left home, I was going to ride around a little while and then go to my mom's. As I rode and rode and rode, I felt even more anxiety coming upon me about not wanting to live. I felt I couldn't be a good mom anymore, but I didn't want my children to grow up without a mom. I felt I had to end our lives to protect us from any grief or harm. I had never felt so lonely and so sad in my entire life. I was in love with someone very much, but he didn't love me, and never would. I had a very difficult time accepting that, but I had hurt him very much, and I could see why he could never love me. When I was at John D. Long Lake, I had never felt so scared and unsure as I did then. I wanted to end my life so bad, and was in my car, ready to go down that ramp into the water. And I did go part way, but I stopped. I went again, and stopped. I then got out of the car and stood by the car, a nervous wreck. Why was I feeling this? Why was everything so bad in my life? I had no answers to these questions. I dropped to the lowest point when I allowed my children to go down that ramp into the water without me. I took off running and screaming, "Oh God, no! What have I done? Why did you let this happen?" I wanted to turn around so bad and go back, but I knew it was too late. I was an absolute mental case. I couldn't believe what I had done. I love my children with all my heart, and that will never change. I have prayed to them for forgiveness, and hope that they will find it in their heart to forgive me. I never meant to hurt them. I am sorry for what has happened, and I know that I need some help. I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for what I have done. My children, Michael and Alex, are with our Heavenly Father now, and I know that they will never be hurt again. As a mom, that means more than words can ever say. I knew from day one the truth would prevail, but I was so scared I didn't know what to do. It was very tough emotionally to sit and watch my family hurt like they did. It was time to bring a peace of mind to everyone, including myself. My children deserve to have the best, and now they will. I broke down on Thursday, November 3rd, and told Sheriff Howard Wells the truth. It wasn't easy, but after the truth was out, I felt like the world was lifted off my shoulders. I know now that it is going to be a tough and long road ahead of me. At this very moment, I don't feel I will be able to handle what's coming, but I have prayed to God that He give me the strength to survive each day and to face those times and situations in my life that will be extremely painful. I have put my total faith in God, and He will take care of me. Susan V. Smith, 11/3/94, 5:05 p.m.
Katherine, Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. Even that is making me ponder just a tad that these events happened at the same time. You want to talk about mercy? Susan Smith, admitted child killer. Orenthal James was exonerated. Same time. Black male privilege. Number to dial 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 6-1 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 6-1 if you would like to participate. In fact, timestamp on this case for then and even for 2025 Jeffrey Epstein case, Alan Dershowitz. Yes, Dream Team. Alan Dershowitz wrote about the Susan Smith case. He was upset and says, see there, look at this. Like early on in the Susan Smith case, once it was found out, like, what? She lied? What? I said, see there? See. Now, if Orenthal James had done all this, wouldn't be no, let's be merciful. What she said, let's forgive. Alan Dershowitz said very early, I have to double check because he might not have been a part of the Dream Team when he wrote this, but he said, look at this. Total disgrace. They're about to pull all this feminism and sexism and woe is me white woman victim and let her weep in the courtroom a little bit, knowing darn tootin' if this had been OJ, and especially in South Carolina, please. Orenthal James wouldn't have got ready for parole, put it that way, a few months ago. It wouldn't have been no, all right, Leroy. All right, OJ. You think you're ready to rejoin? So then, Email is untiljustice@gmail.com. Something about this even repulsive, and she wanted to die. I mean, And even for Devontae, the record shows, hopefully it'll come up in the trial, these children were not no Devontae, Abigail, Sierra, Patrick. She didn't go get no NyQuil and knock them out. At least the lazy, lesbian, racist, starving, heart white women, at least they drugged Devontae at all. The record didn't show that these little fellas were drugged. They were up. That's why we got the song like, what the hell? What the hell? They're wide awake. And even, I just say, anybody that's got children, I don't even have children. I want you to put that in your brain computer. Now, does that register as logical that you got not one, two tiny children, and you managed to get both of them to sleep at the same time, and they are so sound asleep that you can get up and exit a vehicle and they don't even stir? Come on now. Come on now. I mean, I know you got mastered. Leroy stole my car. Yeah. Master deceiver. I get it. That, like, you are out of your mind, my mind. Like, don't insult our intelligence. Come on, man. Come on, man. And even that, just the grisliness of it. Like, dude, what? You got your white children, white genetic annihilation. You could have given them up to adoption and all that. I'm just throw it in neutral and be done with it all. I was never that attached to Alex anyway. You look like your daddy. What? Anyway, what does it mean to be? And this is not the ocean, man. She didn't drop them with, this is 70 feet of water or nothing like, man. Oh, it's so trifling. It is so trifling. It is so trifling. Like, what does it, even that, like, bring OJ up, like, who should be remembered as a killer from this year? Like, OJ? So, she admitted killing 2 white children and lying about it. OJ was acquitted. OJ was acquitted. Ain't no mercy. Let it go. Susan Smith could have been paroled, and probably, if we live long enough, Susan Smith probably will be paroled with a slew of sugar daddies waiting to take care of her. What does it... folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary to share.
Madam Hurt?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak. So her whole confession was a lie. It's a complete lie. The confession, she kept talking about the guy she broke up with. She ain't care nothing about them kids. I don't mean to laugh, but it was the most self-serving confession ever. I was so distraught. I was this, I was that. Oh, I praise to God that he could have reversed it. But meanwhile, she ran from the crime scene to this lady's house and didn't say, hey, I accidentally, on purpose, drowned my kids. Could you please call the cops? She sat there and lied. Like, there was a time frame where they might have been able to get to them. Didn't they say the kids were like trying to scratch to get out? So I doubt that they were asleep. They were probably screaming and going ham, and she reached her like, I can't do this anymore. And then the dude didn't want her, so she just wanted to start over. Yeah, she very, very pathetic, sociopathic. I always find it interesting that in the Mary Taylor Turner book, and this book, and in all the other books that we've done, when it is someone classified as white female, the go-to excuse seems to be they were molested. by somebody, and this is why they have some type of personality disorder. Everybody claims bipolar, which I find convenient in cases like this. Yeah, she didn't want those children. She murdered them, and I think she panicked instead of just ran and gotten out of there. She panicked and lied with a bad lie. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Do you have offspring, ma'am?
I have I'm a dog owner. This is Fresh Princess.
Oh, right. My fault. Okay, no offspring. I'm just trying to check in with our parents to see if they think that is.
No, but but even with this, like, I don't go into if he's in a car and his Terrier, I won't go into the store. I'll drop him off home because I'm super paranoid that somebody's going to carjack my car and he'll be in it. Like, they'll steal my car. I'm in the store. So no, he's home. I don't. No. And if somebody did try to carjack me with him in a car, they would, I would still be dragging behind the car or something. So yeah, she was lying. She was lying from the gate.
Oh, why do people care about dogs? So I'll let you take the dog. Much obliged, Fresh Princess. No offspring. Other folks who dialed in, hand up.
I just want to say, hey, everybody, I'm chiming in again. It's interesting that she was rejected by it's not funny. She was rejected by all of these men. Then she does the double murder of her baby boys, goes to jail. Now she getting letters from all types of men. I don't know what type of demon you got to be to sit up there in front of the news reporters, and they got a video, they got the camcorder or what I'm trying to say, the video thing out, and you're up there lying. Yes, whoever has my babies, bring them back, please. And you're the murderer, though, ma'am. I mean, that's demonic for you to, and just with a straight face, no tears. Oof. Man, disturbing. I mean, my line.
What does it mean to be white? That's what I said. You talk all that you want about O.J. Simpson. Like, he said from day one, he never switched. I did not do this. He was exonerated. She lied to us for 2 weeks. Bring them back, and he got his pooper out and told me he loved me. And I can't. Y'all ain't got that onion. I sure enough asked for that onion. You still ain't got it? Okay, well, let me see. He took his pooper out, and I just. She did that for 2 weeks. You did this and did it you didn't even give them no NyQuil, man. Devontae was knocked out, they tell us. Sierra was asleep, they tell us. You didn't even have the decency to do that. Come on. What does it mean? Oh, do you have offspring, ma'am? Trying to see.
Yeah, I have 3 children. They're all grown, but yeah.
Okay, let's see. So do you think, they might be older now, but you can, go back in your memory a little bit. Do you think you could have little fellas, 3 and under? 1, do you think you could have them in a car? 2, no less, same time, and they both fall asleep. You, mommy, no less, you get up and get out of the car, and they both remain asleep the whole time, and you just, boop, they just go on. Does that seem believable to you as a parent?
No, it doesn't.
Fresh Princess says she wouldn't even leave the dog. My fault. I'm sorry. You said.
No, I was just saying it absolutely doesn't. Nope.
Just trying to use a little bit, since we got so much lying, just trying to use a little bit of logic from people who do have children. I don't have children, but you have got to be out of your mind, especially once we leave the house. Like, now we're out in the scary world. I think Lauren said that last week. Didn't you say that last week, Lauren? That one of the little ones, he's still on a bottle. Did you say that?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Did you have additional commentary for the second portion of the reading, Lauren?
Oh, yes, sir, I do, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I thought their idea to put something in the paper about a young mother who had killed her children, then served a short sentence and had on release made a fine life for herself by marrying a wealthy physician, I thought that would have been an interesting tactic, and it's something that might have worked with Susan Smith. When she was talking, she said, I don't think any parent could love my children more than I do, not their children. And I would never even think about doing anything that would harm them. The truth has been told. I know what the truth is, and I did not have anything to do with the abduction of my children. It's painful to have the finger pointed at you when it's your children. Whoever did this is a sick and emotionally unstable person. I can't imagine why anyone would want to take our children. Boy, those are some Donald Trump type lies, some big ones. The money, they were getting dozens of requests. The family and the Adam Walsh Center had received from strangers offering to put up reward money for the safe return of the two little boys. And it said Margaret planned to write an individual letter to each person who called or wrote in, explaining that they did not plan to set up a reward fund now, but they might do it in the future. And she would ask the donors to let them know in writing how much money they would be able to give. I think it's interesting. They didn't want to miss that opportunity to raise money. I noted the hot food being brought to the family. That made me think of Suckley Bowl. In that letter, she said, why was I feeling this? Why was everything so bad in my life? It's a white woman with a job, a house, a car, and a mortgage that can be paid with the amount of money she's being given from David every month. It just didn't seem that bad to me. In the letter, it said, I took off running and screaming, oh God, no, what have I done? Why did you let this happen? I wanted to turn around so bad and go back, but I knew it was too late. I was an absolute mental case. I couldn't believe what I had done. And I didn't know what to make of that. And at the end of the letter, it says, I know now that it is going to be a tough and long road ahead of me. At this very moment, I don't feel I will be able to handle what's coming, but I have prayed to God that He give me the strength to survive each day and to face those times and situations in my life that will be extremely painful. I have put my total faith in God, and He will take care of me. Mary Kay Letourneau said something very similar in the last text, and white people seem to have a high confidence in God. And I think maybe that's because their God is themselves. The religion of racism, white supremacy. About these children falling asleep, I do think you can put two children in the car and have them stay asleep if you get out of the car. I have experienced this. You can pick up a child and carry them in the house and put them in the bed and they don't wake up. Now all children are different, so maybe I've had different experiences, but in my experience, children sleep really hard. Now I don't think they would have slept through the whole thing. As soon as they would have got wet or had difficulty breathing, they would have woke up. But I think it's possible for both of those children to have been asleep at the beginning, and that's all I have for now.
Much obliged, Lauren. That I do remember there are a number of children, they do sleep really well in the car. Some parents will do some driving, see if they can get them to nod off in the vehicle. Something about they say rambunctious too. A 3-year-old, it's not like this was late. This is like 7, 8 p.m. and it's two of them. Maybe. It's possible. Maybe. But, yeah. I'm doubtful of that. She lied about so much. Yeah, that was what. He lied about so much else. On one that I would kind of be, he lied about that too. They were probably in there acting a fool, even prior to, certainly once they got wet, acting a fool. But even prior to that, Mom is leaving. What the hell? Where you going? What's going on here? You gonna leave us? What's going on? That's in my brain computer about how this would have, Anyway, but it's possible. They could have been asleep. Maybe. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in that we missed totally. Don't wait till the last moment. Let's see. Irie should be with us as well.
Hi. Real quick, I was going to tell Lauren, thank you for double checking the definition of bleak, because I didn't have the etymology dictionary on my phone. I had to make room. And I think that would have been, I was right that would have been better to say than dark or darkest or whatever they were saying. I just was thinking about her, the reason why she murdered the kids, and what I really feel like when she met that particular guy that worked at that company, that was the graphic artist or whatever, and she started seeing the way he lived. She really, because she probably isn't aware of herself in certain ways, she probably did, like they said in the book, got real clingy, and with him being, I guess, to use a metaphor, a playboy of sorts, that was too much for him. But she really had her mindset on hypergamy at that point. And, when he rejected her, it really just turned her psyche out. You know what I'm saying? So I really feel like, I don't know if anybody else said this or whatever, but like, I really feel like she was going to try to get back with that man after a while, and it wasn't going to take long either. I think after like all the police and everybody went away, she was going to try to go get back with that man and be like, don't you feel sorry for me? I don't have any kids anymore, and whatever she was going to say. And it was, it was just pretty disgusting, but I just was thinking about that. Like, I think she premeditated it. Like, I don't know when. It felt very much like, to me, thinking about it, like she was going to try to shoot her shot again with that guy. And she was probably going to be rejected again if she did get away with it. But I don't know. This lady, it's just really strange because, like, how do white people miss all these psychotic signs? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it that mundane or rudimentary to have psychotic people around? And it's going to come out somehow, and it just gets overlooked, and she's nice and, nice, pretty, and fun-loving, church-going, whatever. I'm sorry, I caught the tail end of this particular night session, so I'm sorry that I didn't have too much to contribute about that, but I wanted to just say what I had been thinking about from the other reading. Thank you. I'll mute my line.
Much obliged, Irie. I said while we were reading, excuse me. Okay, should have got my water. But I said while we were reading Columbine, I guess both editions, Dave Cullen and Sue Klebold, and they were trying to excuse Eric Harris their conduct and say, well, he was psychopath. And I said, well, their children, Dave Cullen is not a psychologist or psychiatrist. They're children. You're not supposed to diagnose children. And I said, is this behavior, is this an aberration, or is this typical of white culture? I said at the time, my view, this is pretty typical of white culture. There's nothing singular about what they, well, at this point, hey, I just told you, Jefferson County, they just had another school shooting. So, even on a local level, this is not like, wow, an anomaly. No, this happens all the time, even locally, especially at this point. Not psychopathy, that was what I said. And to Irie's point, hey, is the psychopathy, is it psychotic behavior, is it that widespread that you don't notice? And we said, first portion of the audio, maybe they did notice. Maybe that's why they were resistant to cooperating with enforcement officials. Maybe they did. And some of the family members, it seems like they did think, yeah, at least Dave's family, they thought, yeah, I think she, is lying, or this is just not adding up. White people are not ignorant about what it means to be white. Let's see, email number 2. Chapter 9, Boylan told them about the memory and how a traumatized individual stores the image of a face. Eyewitness accounts are notoriously inaccurate, even though they are still used in court. The actual image, Boylan told them, begins to distort with exposure to as few as 12 photographs. It's an archaic method. When I hear SLED, I think of the Murdoch case, which actually, the Murdoch case is another illustration to, now these are anecdotes, but hey, South Carolina, white man who also a lot of money, so she didn't, Susan Smith didn't have a lot of money, but it's not that their house was going into foreclosure. We haven't heard that she couldn't afford to put gas in the car. Alec Murdoch, he had plenty of money and kills his own child and wife. Family annihilator. White people don't, but that's what I think of when I think of SLED, because they had so much, there were so many Murdoch crimes. SLED had to investigate, and they're still probably investigating the Murdoch family, South Carolina legend. Continuing about these photos, we have read before in the book club how enforcement officials continue to use techniques which are proven to be inaccurate. See the hair analysis, Jeff Toobin, O.J. Simpson. Old school hair analysis is junk science, but it still keeps people behind bars. What people? Leroy, the carjacking kidnapper. Chapter 11. I want to tell a story. Michael did something that he's never done before. He had his pooper. They say even the best liars have what they call a tell. Hers apparently was a lack of tears. The weeping white woman, not so weepy. Chapter 12. One of the investigators flatly accused Susan of doing in her children. Her reaction stunned the men. The docile weeping girl who kept praying for God to look after my babies suddenly turned angry. This is a manipulative and inaccurate description of her behavior. First, she is not weeping. She shed no tears. She ain't sweet if she is lying about the whereabouts of her children, and she ain't no hardened suspect. She is being treated like a white woman. Facts. Oh my goodness. Yeah. During this 9-day period, if this had been Lakeisha, and they really thought, like, man, she done came in here and lied to us about some carjacking, and she, even if, what we said during the first portion, that, Lakeisha, she just has the children with her grandma, and her and Leroy got into it, and they're having a Massey divorce, and she's just trying to manipulate, the child support or whatever, get a few nickels from the pub. Even if they thought that's what this was, it would not be, no, okay, Lakeisha, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Man, you done wasted all these. Man, please. Then, yes, she would have been treated like a hardened suspect. Let's see. 2. Investigators reportedly would use desktop publishing to print up what would appear to be an authentic news story about a young mother who had killed her children, then served a short sentence, and on release made a fine new life for herself. Another example of the extraordinary resources available to suspected racists. It is really on display in this case. Like, you cannot imagine just what horses, fake newspapers, or the journalists. They'd come in and give them all the video footage you could ask for. All of the FBI sled, all of the man hours and enforcement officials. They're coordinating with officials in Seattle. You cannot, just the paper alone. Sketches, multiple sketch artists flying in, people from all over the country. Chapter 13, Susan Smith talked about the crushing isolation she felt, consumed by the desire to end her life. How wrong her whole life seemed, could not escape the torment she felt inside, the ills of her life, the abortion. Tom Finley, that's the fella that she was trying to date, you all kept talking about. Probably accurate. Iris saying that she thinks she would have killed the children, waited a little while, and then went back to old Tom. Said, "Hey, Tom," she would have tried to cry again. Y'all got that onion still? I keep asking. You got, okay. Look here, Tom. Woe is me. Woe is me. I ain't got them children no more, you know. Leroy, no count Leroy, but Leroy, he stole the children. So, you know, I'm trying to cry a little bit. See, anyway, but Leroy took the children, so I ain't got the children no more. So, you know, hey, you know. And she could even really play it. If she could get that onion, she'd cry a little bit. Like, come on now, Tom. I need a little consoling. Come on now, take me out. Come on, Tom. Come on, Tom. I don't need a babysitter. See. Does not get any better than tacky, like extra strength tacky. She loved her. So they say she fell in love. That's another one. Isn't that it's so sound like Billy. Says she fell in love with Tom. What you mean? What you mean? Tom is a rich white man. You didn't fall in love with. You work at Winn-Dixie. They some say they might not say that she fell in love. Some might say she was a gold digger. Fell in love. Say, whoa. I might get out of this Winn-Dixie messing around that no count Dave. I might be able to come up and get rid of these ragamuffins, these crumb snatchers, and we do this thing right, boy. Let's see. She says, October 25th, emotionally distraught. I didn't want to live anymore. Felt things could never get any worse. I felt even more anxiety, not wanting to live. I felt I couldn't be a good mom anymore. Who said she was a good mom? Who said that? I didn't want my children to grow up without a mom. I felt I had to end our lives. So lonely, so sad. Was in love, but didn't have love. Scared, insecure. I wanted to end my life. Everything about this confession is despicable, completely narcissistic. Nothing about the torture she put her children through, the terror they must have gone through while drowning. It's all about her suffering. Woe is me. Well, she told you she's lonely, you know. No count South Carolina, and she got a no count husband. Almost Mary Kay Letourneau. People said that because Mary Kay said, I'm a lonely white woman, you know. Her dad committed suicide, talking about Susan. And Mary Kay, my dad, he was, sick, having all the health problems. My husband wasn't supported. That's what Susan said. My husband, he's sleeping with any old check clerk at the Winn-Dixie, I got to go and fuss at him every other day. We got to get divorced, Left me with all that. They said that about Mary Kay. They said Mary Kay was just overwhelmed, 2 children was too many. That's what they say about Susan. She just, she was overwhelmed. And she's like 10 years younger than Mary Kay. So, and she got less education, less pedigree, see? So, it's, it's the same story, basically. Love at the center of it, see? Because they say Mary Kay fell in love, and say Susan fell in love with old Tom Finley. They didn't say she was a gold digger. Let's see. 14. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't get that far. Sorry. Get that next week. Let's see. Anything to share before we wrap? I didn't really read any of the notes I took. Let's see. For the second sections. The resources. Even when I heard that about the female who killed their children and then go on to live great lives, it's like, man, that's a number of cases. Like, yeah, it's quite a few. Yeah, if you are classified as white. Let's see. When the folks, I thought the same thing when the folks were calling in. They said, we want to get a reward, and we got $10,000. We got missing white children. They got to be found. It was, slow down. We not writing that. Same thing with the volunteers. Like, yeah, can you all buy like one of them snazzy new lie detector gizmos? Can we take? You can. Okay, yeah. Other than that, no. We don't need no reward. We don't need no volunteers. All we got is a lion white heifer. That's all we got. Like, let's see. Man, Shirley MacLaine. Can you imagine? Like, she's a suspected racist. Matter of fact, put this on Jonathan Ferrell. If Shirley MacLaine had been approached by a black Lakeisha, banging on the door. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I've been carjacked. They took little Leroy Jr. I don't know. And I especially, even if her conduct that night would have been the same. She's cautious about opening the door and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. Hey, I don't know if she's going to come out the cape for Lakeisha when it starts to be, hey, we think Lakeisha might be lying about all this. She's trying to scheme us out of some welfare or something. I don't know if Shirley MacLaine going to... I got Lakeisha back. I talked to her that night. I know. Little Leroy, little Jamal, I know. They were taken. Lakeisha didn't lie. This is no welfare scheme. Like, really? Really? I don't say. I guess it's possible. It's possible the little fellas could have been sleeping in the car. I guess. I think that's more possible than this. I'll say that definitively. I think it's way more possible, even though I don't believe that either. But I think it's way more possible. Alex and Mike were asleep in the back. Then Shirley MacLaine coming out if this had been a black female, and now it starts to be, we think Lakeisha might be lying about this whole carjacking thing. No, she not. Cut that out. Y'all believe Lakeisha? Really? Really? Anyway, I cannot even imagine the embarrassment, humiliation, horror, disgrace. I'm out here caping for this lion white heifer. Y'all believe Susan? Yeah, she didn't have nothing to do with this. You know Leroy carjacked her. You know she telling her, and then the same day, oh no, she confessed she drowned him. Like, ooh, I'm not showing my face in town like for a good month. Like, wow, just wow. I even got to check the news to see if she did like a follow up. Like, oh my God, woo. I got to apologize for everybody. She was white. What? She was white. It was. I didn't want to open the door. That's what she said. I didn't even want to open the door. I didn't even want to unchain the door. I thought it could have been a drug scheme. You know, they got these old fentanyl crackheads out here and everything. And I'm not going to show my face in town for it. She thought the children would be better off dead than motherless and alone. Like, even that. Like, what? Well, they're for sure motherless now, yes? You chickened out. You didn't even, in fact, you want to talk about Columbine. The C word pops up in this here story as well. Even though, I mean, that would seem minimal, but whew, at minimum, use a massive coward. Like, stay your hind parts in the car. Better yet, children, let them out. You get in the car and deuces. We don't need you around no more. You're too cowardly to even do that correctly. Mostly because she did what she wanted. She didn't care about them children. It was deuces, and then I'm going to go see if I can manipulate old Tom Finley. And that, hey, I ain't even got no children now, so you come on, let's get down. Oh, disgusting. Let's see. Yeah, I don't believe that nothing about that she tried. I don't even believe that she tried to stop the car from going in and had. I do not believe any of that at all. I think this was totally premeditated. The same way Mary Kay lied about it. Oh no, Veely raped me. You know, I didn't plan none of that. What do you mean? Veely wanted me to get pregnant, and it just mastered this lie, and lie. I think all of that is a lie. I think she just went, boop, car in neutral, deuces, they're wide. Well, what's going on? What are you gonna? Yeah. The deuces, all right. Tom Finley, and I'm gonna blame this on Leroy. Overcome with grief and like, are you? That's she, and because she said the baby slept so peacefully in the back seat. Now, if they were NyQuil'd up, if she had done it like the Hearts, oh, okay, we got Devontae. Okay, they read about this. Okay. Nah, man. They were sleeping peacefully. They didn't just nod off a little bit and you snuck out. They were sleeping peacefully. You are a lying, murdering racist, Susan. Mary Kay, you're racist too, raping little Veely. Let's see. And she said keeping the terrible secret these 9 days had been torture. What a lie. What a lie. You could have went in the corner and sat quietly. You did the exact opposite. You maximized attention on yourself and this event. Go out and lie and add more lies to it. What does it mean to be white? Go and lie in front of the children's dad. Go and lie, hold his hand and lie in front of him every day. Got people wondering, did he know about this? They in cahoots about this? That's the narcissism. I don't care about nothing. Now again, I say now, hey, if the family, they're not even cooperating with the investigation. We think they know what's up with Susan Smith. They've been around her whole life. They know what she is. If that is the case, that's why I'm saying, like, wouldn't that qualify as like whole family of psychopaths? Really, y'all aid and abetting after the fact facts in my book. You know something is fishy about all this. You're not even cooperating. Obstruction of justice. White people don't. And see, that's I keep saying, it's not one thing. It's really widespread. The same thing with the white psychopathic white personality and other essays. Dr. Bobby E. Wright, psychopathic racial personality, and other essays by Dr. Bobby E. Wright. It's so widespread. It's not an individual thing. It's the same thing with white disregard for children. It's not a one thing. Even, in fact, white people tell on themselves. White people got tons of documentaries and movies and such about white children being abducted and killed, and they made a star out of Jeff Dahmer and all these folks. The vast majority of these child killer cases, Leroy didn't do it. It's exactly what we're reading right now. In fact, I would challenge anybody. Can you think of a case, black dude abducted some white children, that happened in real life? Don't hurt your pecan-sized Negro brains, because I can't think of one that happened like for real, not no lynching and you did it, Leroy, that sort of thing. When we know Leroy didn't did it, but we sure had fun at the lynching. I can't even think of one. I can think of tons of like John Benet Ramsey. I just gave him. I can think of tons. I can't think of one where there was no Negro dude. I'm not saying it never happened. I'm just saying I can think of quite a few with white children. It's other white children. That's why the police code is not white child disobedient. We're going to go raid the ghetto right now. No. Charles Stewart killed his pregnant wife. They called in Boston and said, we already seen this. White culture, man, that's why I say it's so widespread. It's not no one individual thing. It's not even no one part of the world thing. What is even systemic? Like I said, we could have did this on a large scale. Catholic Church, Boy Scouts, and we still would have got Mary Kay Letourneau in there. Any hoodles. She's so passive. White people do that all the time. They deliberately, actively practice racism, like Susan Smith, but they make it so passive. She said, Lord, white Jesus, why did you allow this to happen? Do what? You strapped these children, your white children, in the car, hopped out, and allow? You did this deliberately. What do you mean? What do you mean? Lauren pointed that out as well. Like, come on, man. Come on. And she even includes, she said, hey, I know it's messed up. I done killed the children. I hope they don't give me the death penalty. Good Lord. Mental case. Yes. I was suicidal and abused, and I'm a blonde, pretty, frail, white. That's what Americans say. I'm frail, see, and sexually abused. And it's been trying. I don't even have money to put in the car sometimes for gas. It's been hard, see. Exact same thing Mary Kay said. I had to resort to raping children because it's been hard. We shall resume. O.J. Simpson, man, Susan Smith will probably get paroled. She admitted to killing 2 children and tried to blame it on O.J. Mercy. Let's be merciful. O.J. been dead for over a year now. Do you hear people saying, let's be merciful about O.J.? Bygones, casting aspersions about O.J. Maybe the Bills win the Super Bowl, they'll have a patch for the juice. Wishful thinking. We'll be here tomorrow. Compensatory call in 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Lots to catch up on the plantation. Hopefully worthy of folks Friday evening. I think we have about another half of the text to go. Sins of the Mother, Maria Eftimiades. That said, sobriety would be best. There is so much deception. If anything, when Fuller says master deceivers, this isn't even like one of the, better deceivers of our era. And still, wow. That's why, one of many reasons, but this is why sobriety would be best. We need high functioning brain computers. Like, do what? She said, what? Let me make sure I can think about it. Because what? And now, once this has been said, it would be much better if enforcement officers are going to come on my job. Look here, Leroy, we need you to come down to the station. We think you might know something about these missing white children. Oh, man. I would much rather be sober if I'm going to have to go down to the station to talk about these missing white children that I don't know nothing about. Any hoodles. Creator, we ask, remind us. Put Susan Smith in mind, or Mary Kay. Stop saying not all white people are racist. Stop name-calling people classified as black. Stop producing throwaway offspring to be raped. Oh man, did we miss someone? That's crazy. I didn't even see that. Anyway, stop producing non-white throwaway offspring to be raped by Mary Kay and or drowned by Susan Smith, and then blame it on Leroy. Or Mo in Dallas. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. I did see that. That's wacky. Mo in Dallas, did you have a quick comment before we wrap up? I didn't see your pen. He must have snuck in there. Do you have a quick comment? We'll give him 60 seconds on old Susan Smith. And you have children too. Do you think it's possible? Do you think you could have like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, two of them, same time? You could have them both at the car at like 8 o'clock at night and they'd fall asleep. You go to get out of the car and they both remain asleep. Do you think that could be possible?
Well, I will try to be brief. I'm sorry for being late. And actually, I've had experience with this, and it was a split with me. I had one child that slept like a stone, and the other one I couldn't leave the room without the child waking up. So it really depends on, and they were 2 years apart. So it really depends on the kid, in my personal opinion as an attentive parent. My quick comments. The one thing that was doting to me was having a 3-year-old in church is madness. They are doing everything but listening to the service. And I'm not speaking about my children. I've been to church and I've seen other people in churches with 3-year-olds, and these little people are trying to eat the Bible. They're crying, they're kicking, they're walking around. They will sit still, but not for long. It's a 3-year-old. What was my other comment? The confession story. I feel like that, and this is a personal feeling. I really feel like they were grilling her, and a part of grilling her when they were on the confession day was they were helping her construct that letter to hopefully plead for sympathy from the public. That's just in my opinion. And I also understand that, at least in the experiences I've witnessed with law enforcement, that it was all about conserving resources. Like, so they're not going to leave the interrogation room with a search party or things like that without putting the parent or the whatever in an accuser box about whatever situation. I don't care what it is, but especially missing children. Where were you? You sure? And if it doesn't add up, we're going to go over this story 9-10 times just for inconsistency. That's all I have. I'm sorry for, like I said, coming in late. I got off and I didn't want to call in while I was at work. I mute my line. Thank you, Betsy.
Much obliged. Privileged black male, Mo in Dallas, with offspring. Importantly, he said it depends on the child. He has one. I think that's how Lauren described it. Sleep like a stone. You might have to pick him up, carry him in. Other child. What's going on? Where you going? You leave me? What? It depends on the child. That's why I said importantly, both. Do I think she got 2 children that both sleep like a stone, even when mom gets up to get out of the car? I do not know. I do, especially her saying they were sleeping peacefully. Absolutely not. You're a proven liar. I think they were wide awake, and you are that dastardly. At minimum, they were awake at some point during all this. I think they were awake from the very beginning. You are no count. They didn't say the children were running around. Every report I've read, they were strapped in. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.